A desperate voice pierces the darkness, pleading to be let out. Facing the man, she demands to know why he's doing this to them. But our hero remains silent, his back to her, a dark aura swirling around him. The young woman then reveals that because of him, the child in her arms has stopped breathing on her own. Uncontrollably sobbing, she screams out, asking if he's finally satisfied. He questions her back, saying she should know perfectly well the reason for all this. The regressor continues, mentioning that they're being trapped here and the other one ending things herself. At that moment, he seizes her chin, asserting that they brought all of this upon themselves. Through her tears, the young woman tries to deny it, insisting they did nothing wrong. He cuts her off, ordering her not to say another word because it was all over. Just like that, everything dissolves and the protagonist's sixth regression finally begins. Even in this new life, he once again failed to stop the apocalypse. Amidst the chaos, Ujete wonders if things might have been different had he just listened to that person. Suddenly, an enormous red dragon materializes before him, poised to strike. The creature wastes no time, unleashing a powerful torrent of fire at him. However, the protagonist shows no sign of fear, merely staring down the attack hurtling his way. He thinks to himself that he regrets nothing as he braces for the impact. In that instant, a potent blue energy gathers in his hand, forging the formless sword. What he came to understand in his sixth life is that failure and experience are everything. With this conviction, he surges forward with his energy sword, determined to rewrite his fate. The blade of energy collides with full force against the mighty dragon. In the blink of an eye, several of these creatures are struck down by the lone man. Though exhausted, the protagonist fights on bravely with his energy blade. Moving with incredible speed, he slices through every monster in his path. In the end, he stands alone amidst the ruins of a completely destroyed and burning city. With a wary sigh, the young man surveys the utter devastation around him. But despite his monumental effort, a failure message flashes before the regressor. His regression ability then activates, and time begins to spiral backward. His expression reveals he is far from giving up on his ultimate goal. He knows this failure wasn't for nothing. It will serve as another lesson. A notification that informs him that the world's clock has been reset once more. The scene shifts, showing confused people staring at something strange in the sky. They're looking at a purple portal that appeared from nowhere, giving off an unsettling vibe. A woman gets a bad feeling, but her boyfriend just calls her a scaredy cat. The guy wants to snap a picture, telling her to hurry before the police show up. With her phone in hand, the girl is frozen solid with fear at the sight before her. In a moment of sheer terror, she startles and drops her phone on the ground. Monsters then pour out of the portal, attacking the people of the 21st century. From that day forward, portals opened across the globe, unleashing hordes of creatures. From other rifts, even more bizarre monsters emerged, ready to attack. And from these portals, a non-stop stream of monstrous beasts began to emerge. People fled in desperation, and it seemed as if humanity was on the brink of extinction. But humankind discovered a new hope by awakening credible powers. With that, a new period known as the New Apocalypse finally begun. The world then gathered its young hunters on Artificial Island for training. This was the Academy City, and the regressor was now living his seventh life. On the street, a man with a metal arm holds a woman hostage, threatening her life. Police officers surround him, demanding he surrender, but the criminal refuses to comply. He declares that since he's done for, everyone else is going down with him. Suddenly, Uj appears behind him, coolly stating, "They told you to surrender." The thug is startled, having not sensed anyone approaching him. Our protagonist stares down the kidnapper with a cold, emotionless gaze. Enraged, the criminal makes a move against the hostage, but it's too late. In the blink of an eye, the officer disarms him, prompting a shocked question from the villain. Uj Taekong replies that he's not just some the milk cop. "IMTA police," he declares before landing a powerful kick on the man. The impact is so immense that the criminal is slammed into the ground, creating a crater. Lying unconscious, the villain is defeated, and the officer reflects on his own strength. He introduces himself as Uj, realizing he forgot to hold back his power. Inside the police station, a news report details the capture of the superhuman trafficker. A colleague sees the report and remarks that the criminal had taken someone hostage. She then glances at the unconscious man on the floor and asks why he's passed out there. The protagonist calmly replies that he simply picked him up on his way to the station. His partner starts to mention the report but thinks better of it, instead congratulating the veteran on a job well done. Observing him from the side, she comments that somehow Tae seems different. The other officers agree, noting that he appears taller and even more handsome than before. One of them complains that he was too rough with the criminal, but the regressor doesn't recognize anyone. For him, having been away from this life since his regressions began, they were all strangers. The officer announces he'll handle it and drags the unconscious criminal away, but the reason he had given up on this life was the loss of the baby dragons. These hatchlings had traveled from another world to Earth just for a bit of fun. In the process, the chaos of war drove some of them mad, causing them to lose control. Others couldn't bear the world's evil, and some even stopped their own hearts from pure sorrow. Enraged by the passing of their young, the adult dragons launched their assault on humanity. Despite becoming incredibly powerful, he couldn't protect the world alone in his past lives. That's why, in this new regression, he plans to try a completely different approach. His colleague calls out to him, asking what his plans are after work that day. Blushing, she invites him to dinner at a new restaurant that just opened nearby. But Tae politely declines, explaining he needs to go to Europe to handle some business. The scene then shifts, revealing the beautiful city of Florence, Italy, his destination. In the Italian city, a green-haired girl is playing with children in a park. A mysterious hand gently ruffles the hair of a little girl, who beams with happiness. The green-haired young woman is having a wonderful time with the kids, who are running and laughing all around her. After their playtime, the children wave goodbye to her as our protagonist watches from a distance. He approaches the young woman, a serious expression on his face, and offers a greeting. She turns toward him, a look of curiosity and mild surprise on her face at his sudden appearance. As the wind tosses her hair, she studies him, trying to make sense of the situation. Tae, getting straight to the point, tells her she is going with him somewhere. An ability activates, and she greets him back flawlessly in his native language. She asks why he sought her out, and he replies that he has business to attend to. The young woman questions if he knew who she was, to which the regressor confirms he did. He then asks if she knows who he is, and she confirms that as well. With a smile, she turns and speaks his full name, Tae. She then meets his gaze confidently and asks if she got his name right. Surprised, his expression turns serious as he asks where she heard that name. Pointing to his chest, she says his name is written right there on his uniform. The girl giggles, admitting she was just kidding and has no idea who he is. But she is certain of one thing: he is powerful and does not belong here. The man remains silent, processing her words and their implications. She then questions if he's there to put an end to her, an idea the officer quickly denies. Her next question is whether he's gonna kidnap her, to which he replies something like that. This leads her to accuse him of being a dragon freak, but he sternly tells her to cut the jokes. The regressor reveals his true intention is to protect her, but warns that if she refuses to listen, he'll have to use more forceful methods. He explains that her kind can read the threads of providence, giving them superior instincts. Therefore, the protagonist states since she is one of them, the same applies to her. Standing behind her with a dark aura, he says he expects her to make the right choice. The young woman asks with a smile if he'll be nice to her, provided she behaves. He confirms this and she agrees, but only on the condition that she's treated as an honored guest. Winking, she holds out her pinky finger and asks sweetly, "Promise." Her little finger glows faintly as she awaits the officer's response. Tae just gives her a serious, unimpressed look. In the end, he agrees, and the two seal their promise by linking their pinkies. The scene shifts to a modern city skyline dotted with tall, luxurious skyscrapers. The green-haired girl appears, looking sleepy, and peeks out of her room, mumbling. Wearing only an oversized shirt, she wonders aloud if the mister is awake yet. Entering the living room, she calls his name and sees him on the sofa, accompanied by an eerie shadow. He is conversing with the shadow of the Grand Duke, a clone possessing half of his abilities. The shadow materializes into a perfect replica of him and vows to obey its master. With that, the clone rises and walks slowly toward the young woman who watches intently. The duplicate greets her, and she notes that he looks exactly like the original. Tae tells her not to worry, explaining the clone will handle his work, then asks if she slept well. She asks if he isn't going to work himself, but he clarifies that the clone is one of his skills, so it's practically the same as him being there. Besides, the regressor adds, he needs to stay by her side for protection, which makes the young woman laugh awkwardly. To break the ice, she suggests they get breakfast, but the officer doesn't seem to grasp her hint. She insists, pointing out they need to eat since they skipped dinner last night, but he just says he's fine. The young woman explains it feels a bit strange to eat alone when the host of the house isn't joining her. The protagonist questions this, asking if she always eats and whether dragons can't survive without food. With a smile, she explains it's not about survival. Delicious food brings happiness and energy. Getting excited, she stands up and urges him go shopping, but Yujite again says he's fine and doesn't need to. Undeterred, the girl insists, declaring with a confident look that she will show him the power of breakfast. The scene changes to the storefront of a large supermarket in the city called S-Mart. Outside, people are coming and going, doing their daily shopping as usual. Inside, other shoppers stare at the pair, and a child remarks that the young woman looks like a celebrity. A woman also comments on how handsome the man beside her is, while a friend teases her about it. The two of them walk through the aisles, and the young woman seems delighted by the unexpected trip. He questions the large number of items in their cart, but she explains the kitchen had no ingredients or even dishes. She says they'll need to cook, so they must have the basics, but he cuts her off, stating they'll eat out. Confused, she asks why, and the regressor explains they have to stop somewhere first. He also notes that it's well past breakfast time, and she apologizes, admitting she was having too much fun. As they walk, the man explains that she'll need a few essentials while staying there. He hurries her along, saying they have a lot to accomplish, which only confuses the girl more. They arrive at a shady-looking establishment, where an old man with a cybernetic eye asks if she's the boss's girlfriend. The protagonist threatens him, telling him to shut his mouth and do his job unless he wants to lose his other eye. Afterward, they visit a place resembling a government office, where the young woman receives several documents. With his help, she navigates a holographic interface, looking thrilled by the technology. She's amazed to see she now has her very own identification card under the name Ubom. The regressor asks how she managed to live on Earth without an ID, a bank account, or a holographic watch. She explains that her new last name came from him, that asks why her first name is Bomb. He reveals the name is inspired by the 4 seasons, as there are 4 dragons in total. With a radiant smile, the girl says she absolutely loves her new name, Ubom. She remarks that spring is the season of life, making it a beautiful name. She then confesses that, to be honest, she hasn't entirely overcome her fear of him. The young woman continues, saying she knows he's a very dangerous and unpredictable person. But I don't think you're a bad person, she adds, prompting him to ask how she can be so sure after just one day. She turns to him and declares that her instincts are the best, as she belongs to the Green Dragon clan. The protagonist simply watches her in silence as flower petals drift down around them. With a gentle smile, she asks if she can observe him a while longer, just to be certain. Flashing a smile he's never seen before, the Green Dragon invites him to dinner, announcing that she'll be cooking. He gazes up at the sky lost in thought, watching the cherry blossom petals fall slowly around him. Closing his eyes, the regressor thinks to himself that this was not a bad start at all. The story shifts to a desert somewhere on the African continent. There, a red-haired girl stares down at a man on the ground, mocking his weakness. Furious, the man curses her, asking if she really thought she'd get away with this. With a smirk, she grinds her heel onto his face and confirms that yes, she did, showing no remorse. The young woman then remarks she might have pressed a little too hard because he was ugly and asks if he's passed on yet. Wearing a mask, she celebrates her record 199 wins in 199 fights. With a confident glint in her eye, she removes her mask and wonders who her next opponent will be. News reports flash across the screen, detailing the chaos in Africa and identifying the troublemaker. Back at the apartment, the protagonist sees the news and realizes it's time to make his move. Ubom calls him for dinner, but he tells her they can just go out to eat. However, at the table, the officer is confronted with a very strange dish fish served with purple rice. He stares at the food with a deadpan expression as the young woman asks if it doesn't look good. She explains it's a sardon recipe she learned in England, combined with rice. The meal looks so unappetizing that the fish on his spoon seems to be begging for a swift end. His eyes turn a shade of purple as he silently stares at the plate, saying nothing. The man then announces he's gonna retrieve the red one tomorrow, surprising the young woman. She warns him that bringing the red one along will be difficult, as she won't follow as obediently as she did. He suggests she come with him, but she doubts her presence would be helpful between different clans. The regressor questions the distance between them, and she confirms they all desire different things. The girl explains that she prefers a calm approach, but the Red Clan is anything but. She continues, explaining that they thrive on war and violence, and for them, being dominated is a fate worse than their end. The protagonist agrees but warns that if they don't bring the Red Dragon back soon, the situation will become dangerous. He reveals someone is pursuing her, and if things continue this way, the Red One will certainly be taken out. He insists that if she comes along, they can resolve everything peacefully and without any trouble. UBOM gives him a surprised look and asks why he's making that puppy dog face. She had thought he was the type to handle everything on his own, but the man simply remains quiet. With a smile, the young woman agrees to help, doubting he asks for favors very often. However, she has one condition, and the curious regressor asks what that condition might be. The condition is that he must eat everything she served, since she saw him put his spoon down. Closing his eyes, the young man seems to resign himself to the green-haired girl's blackmail. With that, he admits defeat and prepares to face her bizarre culinary creation. The scene shifts to a desolate rocky area showing several soldiers lying fallen and defeated. In a ruined village, the red-haired girl is surrounded by the numerous enemies she has vanquished. One of the men on the ground groans in pain while she complains about how weak they were. She laments that her 200th victory was so anticlimactic and wonders where she should go next. Suddenly, she remembers the Green One is in Europe and considers paying her a little visit. Two surviving soldiers comment in disbelief that their elite unit was wiped out by a single girl. One of them says they can't handle her alone and hopes arrives soon to help. The redhead appears behind them, asking what they're whispering about in the shadows. One of the soldiers turns in a panic and screams for her to watch out for what's behind her. But it's too late. With a battle cry, the red-haired girl lunges forward with her weapon. A brilliant light flashes, and she braces for the intense combat about to unfold. Her weapon clashes against a golden sword in a powerful destructive impact. She strains against the force, wondering how her enemy's mana can be so heavy and overwhelming. The opponent's hand grips the sword firmly, not yielding a single inch to her attack. Screaming with rage, she unleashes a red aura, pushing back the enemy's sword with all her might. The soldiers are stunned to see her slice through the knight's mana as if it were nothing. Then, the armored knight known as Javor finally steps onto the battlefield. Wreathed in flames, he orders his men to retreat immediately with the wounded. His eye glows from beneath his hood as he admits the girl's attack startled him a bit. Now without her mask, the raid head acknowledges that the knight's attack was incredibly strong and dangerous. With a confident smirk, she faces him and asks if he's the final boss around here. He remarks that she's younger than he expected, and she playfully responds to his comment. The young woman claims she wore a mask to avoid distracting others with her stunning beauty. But Javra ignores her, noting that she sensed the power gap yet didn't surrender. She scoffs at the idea of running just because he managed to break one of her weapons. The girl declares she'd rather go down fighting than surrender like a coward. With that, she charges forward enveloped in an intense, powerful red energy. The fight erupts as the two exchange swift and mighty blows without a moment's pause. Seizing a moment of distraction, she finds an opening and lands a cheap shot on the man. The red-haired girl is left utterly shocked by what just happened. Her punch landed dead on, yet the knight didn't even flinch, and she wonders how it's possible. He taunts her, saying she's clearly never fought someone stronger, and has only had easy victories. With his eye gleaming in the darkness, the knight admits her talent is indeed impressive. But he warns her that he isn't the type to indulge her childish pranks. With that, Xavier strikes with his golden sword, and the young woman screams as she tries to defend herself. He then activates his weapon's power, and the mighty blade of RA begins to glow intensely. The knight uses ignition ability, preparing to unleash a devastating attack. Desperate, the girl realizes she can't dodge and braces for the impact. A massive beam of light shoots from the sword, heading straight for the redhead. She is sent flying into a wall, groaning in pain from the forceful impact. The man thinks to himself that he'll need to increase his own strength as she had forced him onto the defensive earlier. Suddenly, he notices something odd and glances to the side, slightly confused. Xavier wonders if she escaped, but in reality, the Green One has appeared and saved her from the attack. The Red One is surprised, and her friend says she heard she was in trouble and rushed to help. While healing her, the young woman warns that if she keeps fighting, she'll definitely be done for. But the redhead refuses to back down, insisting she'll fight to the very end, no matter what. Ubom then reminds her that the moment she's gone, their fun is over too. She explains that her passing isn't just her own to decide and asks if she really wants to spoil the game. With a smile, the green one says she still wants to enjoy Earth and asks for the red one's help. The red-haired girl just stares at her friend in silence, processing her words. She asks if the plan is to escape together but immediately dismisses it, knowing the night would catch them. Ubom tells her not to worry, assuring her that the hold man will handle everything without a problem. The young woman reveals she didn't come alone, and at that moment Ujit appears on the battlefield. With his eye glowing, Xavier looks at the newcomer and asks who he is. A blonde girl appears, remarking that she smells the green one's scent, but that it's not her. The protagonist observes the scene with his usual wary expression, saying nothing. The young blonde approaches him and with a smile, asks for his name. With a curious glint in her eye, she asks if he's not one of the bad guys here. He turns and replies, "I am her guardian," leaving the girl confused. The regressor faces the knight and formally introduces himself as the redhead's guardian. Xavier questions this, pointing out that, judging by her actions, the girl doesn't seem to be in need of protection. The man replies that things are complicated and he can't explain everything right now. He suggests they end things here, but Xavier dislikes the idea and becomes irritated. The knight insists the girl has crossed a line, but the protagonist defends her. Xavier grows angry and tells him not to play word games. The man asks the knight to let the matter go, but he refuses. Enraged, the knight prepares for battle, his golden sword at the ready. He charges forward, warning that the area is under the jurisdiction of the San. With his sword glowing, declares his intention to arrest them both as a San investigator. The knight lunges forward with his golden sword, unleashing a powerful and devastating strike. A massive explosion of light and golden energy obliterates everything in the vicinity. Through the settling dust, the knight confidently observes the wreckage from his attack. He remarks that if the man is truly the guardian of that monster girl, an attack like that won't take him down. But suddenly, the protagonist appears behind him and calls him tiresome, leaving the knight stunned. Ujit criticizes him, saying that for someone ranked F, he's far too rigid. Startled, the knight wonders how the man could have appeared behind him so quickly. Angrily, he summons the sword of Ra once more, ready to strike again. The sword glows intensely with an overwhelming golden power. Before he can act, the knight is struck by a swift and brutal blow. A dark energy shrouds the regressor's foot as he kicks him with full force. Ujit grabs him by the neck and, in a cold voice, commands him to listen silently. With a menacing glare, he tells the knight that today is the unluckiest day of his life. The man then begins to tell the knight a new story, a tale about a monster. In this story, due to misfortune, he failed to react to the first blow and lost his arms and eyes. Ujit summons his energy sword, saying the knight will soon forget everything. He attacks without mercy as a message explains that the sand can restore his limbs. But while his body can be healed, the fear seared into his mind will remain forever. Fallen, the knight mutters the regressor's name, noting that he always preferred this method. With a thoughtful expression, the protagonist seems to be recalling something from his past. He remembers that even a ferocious dragon was no exception, as the Reddit asks what kind of monster he is. The green one clarifies that he isn't a monster but a human, a statement her friend finds hard to believe. The protagonist turns to the red dragon and informs her she will live with him, under his protection. He continues, promising to provide her with freedom and support whenever necessary. The man then walks toward the two girls, his presence imposing in dark. But with a threatening glare, he warns her of the consequences should she ever leave his protection. Ubom hugs her terrified friend, promising to calm her down and explain everything later. In a panic, the red-haired girl screams, asking why he's being so frightening. With a smile, the green one winks at the man as if to say, "I've got this." The regressor simply observes the scene in silence, showing no reaction. He then gives her a new name, Urium, and says he will explain everything later on. As they walk away, the green one teases her friend, but the redhead says she's not in the mood for jokes. The officer communicates with his clone, reporting that the mission was a success. The scene shifts to his clone in the Amazon rainforest with a little blonde girl. The clone replies, "Good work," and says he will wrap things up and return soon. Back in the city, he reflects that sending Ubom was the right call for handling the redhead. In the forest, the little girl asks who he was just talking to. He dismisses it as nothing, but she's suspicious. It's then revealed that she is the Gold Dragon. Those of the Gold Clan were born to be in the spotlight, and she had lived 3 lives as a star. But the life in which she shone the brightest was also the one that brought the most disaster and destruction to the world. A message states that attention and admiration can be toxic, which is why the Gold Dragon isolated herself. The blonde girl gets excited by the holographic screen, telling the man it's incredibly cool. She marvels that the screen floats in mid-air with a quality unlike anything she's ever seen. The clone then questions her, asking why she's in such a secluded place. He tells her she should be living among humans, but out here there are only beasts and insects, which shocks her. She asks how he knew, and the clone reveals he heard it from the Green Dragon, which makes her very excited. With a serious expression, he addresses her as the Gold Dragon, revealing her true identity. The man then asks the young girl directly if she happens to be afraid of other people. Embarrassed, she clarifies it's not exactly fear, but she did try living among humans once. She recounts how some people would stare at her strangely and even follow her, which frightened her. With a sigh, she finishes her story and the clone simply listens in silence. He then changes the subject, asking if she likes bread, to which the blonde replies that dragons don't eat it. The man simply snaps his fingers, activating one of his mysterious abilities. He uses the shallow abyss to summon something, leaving the girl shocked at the sight. Confused, the young blonde stares at what he pulled from the portal, not understanding what just happened. Her eyes sparkle. She wonders if what he materialized out of thin air is real bread. Suddenly, a bag filled with all kinds of bread magically appears before her. Awestruck, she asks if the delicious-smelling bread is for her, and the man nods. The girl becomes ecstatic upon seeing donuts, pies, and other sweets in the bag. The clone addresses her as the Gold Dragon, saying that instead of staying here, she should come with him. He explains that her friends are there and that she should enjoy the game just like the other dragons. But the blonde hesitates, saying her mother taught her not to follow strangers. At that, the clone turns and offers to buy her macarons as a little bribe. The young dragon is stunned, her eyes shining brightly at the man's proposal. The scene shifts back to the modern city where the protagonist and the other dragons are staying. On the balcony, the red-haired girl gazes at the city with a bored expression. She appears to be in a full mood, brooding over something that is clearly bothering her. The red-haired recalls the night and the man who saved her from that dangerous fight. Angrily, she mutters herself, seemingly unable to accept her earlier defeat. From inside the apartment, the green one watches her friend on the balcony with a worried look. She calls out to the red one, apparently wanting to talk about what's on her mind. Suddenly, the green-haired girl hears a noise, and her eyes widen in surprise. The protagonist arrives with the Gold Dragon, who insists she didn't follow him just for the tasty bread. She then bites into a macaron with an expression of pure bliss on her face. As she eats the sweet treat, the girl is in ecstasy, clearly savoring the flavor. She exclaims that the macaron is crispy on the outside, moist on the inside, and tastes like heaven. The green one welcomes the Mr. Home, while the blonde continues to eat happily beside her. With a smile, the Gold Dragon turns and enthusiastically greets her green-haired friend. The green one smiles back, saying it's been too long and that she's grown more beautiful. With that, the two embrace, and the blonde says she missed her old friend dearly. Excitedly, the blonde asks if her friend lives alone with the mister, but the green one clarifies that the red one is there too. With that, the clone bids farewell to his master, and the original dismisses him, saying he'll be summoned again soon. From the balcony, the red-haired girl watches the scene unfold with an unfriendly expression. The protagonist just observes the situation in silence, holding the bag of pastries he brought. With a click of her tongue, the redhead makes her displeasure with the newcomers perfectly clear. But the gold one pays her no mind and waves with a radiant smile to her friend, the red one. The young blonde asks if she's all right, and the green one complains about the smell of her friend's cigarette. Irritated, the red one shoves a pastry into the gold one's mouth to shut her up. Angrily, she threatens the girl and tells her to stop being so annoying, which frightens the green one. In the living room, the man sits across from the three of them and asks for each of their ages. The green one replies that she's 20, while the gold one says with a smile that she's only 10. Lazily, the red one reveals that Summer, referring to herself, is 15 years old. The blonde proudly states that dragons mature quickly, and she doesn't need to be treated like a child. She then asks about the nickname Summer, and the redhead says she has no clue where it came from. UBOM explains that the mister named her Spring, which surprises the gold one. She questions him, as they aren't supposed to receive names before their coming-of-age ceremony. The blonde then deduces her name must be Odin, and the man studies her for a moment. The regressor surprises her by revealing that the pup that is yet to be born will be Winter. Shocked, she asks if he knew about the blue one's egg, and her necklace begins to glow. He replies that she doesn't need to concern herself with how he knows so much about dragons. The protagonist announces that since they're all gathered, he's gonna make one thing very clear. He explains they are free to enjoy their game, but must not stray outside the fence, leaving the blonde confused. He states that the game will be managed by him, prompting the redhead to complain that he sounds like a communist. In their cute forms, the three fall silent, and the red one asks if he has a problem with that. The redhead says she understands and asks if they can play nearby, and then the three of them stand up. With a smile, the green one tells the girls it's time to go out, as they need to get IDs and do some shopping. The gold one is excited, but the red one points out they have no money and suggests picking a fight somewhere. The man tosses his wallet to the green one, telling them not to worry and to just have fun. The green-haired girl thanks him and asks if there's any sort of spending limit for them. With an indifferent glance, he turns and replies that they can spend whatever they want. Subsequently, numerous spending notifications flood the man's watch, quickly exceeding the limit. Back at the apartment, the girls admire their purchases while the protagonist looks on. The green one approaches him and hands back the wallet, looking a bit embarrassed. She apologizes, explaining she wanted to buy him some clothes too, but the card was maxed out. Just then, the gold one calls out to him and, with a smile, asks the mister to look at her. She shows off her new outfit and mentions she also bought a video game console just like his. He tells her the clothes suit her well, and she thanks him, overjoyed by the compliment. Off to the side, the red-haired girl watches the scene silently with a serious expression. She then announces she also bought something, and the gold one gets excited to see what it is. With that, the redhead reveals a new sword, explaining her old one was destroyed in the fight. She asks if he likes it, saying she bought a high-quality one, but he dismisses it as not junk. At this, the gold one offers to give her friend some new clothes, but the redhead angrily rejects the gift. The green one explains that Summer has trouble expressing herself but is actually very grateful, which relieves the man. The regressor then asks UBOM why she didn't buy anything for herself. She smiles and says she did buy something, pointing to a small potted plant on the table. He is then taken aback to see that the only thing she bought for herself is a flower pot. She says that caring for plants is good for the soul, prompting him to ask about significance. Holding the pot, the girl replies with a smile that it's because the plant is going to bloom. She continues, saying that because of this, it will become a cherished memory for all of them. With a gentle smile on her face, the green one adds that it will last forever. Suddenly, she turns and says she's curious about something, and he asks what it is. She asks if there's a way for them to enjoy their game while still following the rules he set. The protagonist confirms that there is, surprising the girl with his unexpected answer. With that, he presents an application form and asks if they'd like to go to school. Both the redhead and the blonde are utterly shocked by the suggestion of attending school. The scene changes, showing the three girls returning to the apartment after a long day of interviews. The redhead complains about the lengthy interview, and they wonder where Mr. Ujite is gone. Suddenly, the gold one remembers something dreadful and gets the other two's attention. Panicking, the blonde worries she might be the only one who failed, and the redhead grumbles about her friend's bad luck. The man appears behind her as she frets, reassuring her that they all did a great job. Desperate, the blonde girl latches onto him, convinced she's gonna fail, but he calms her down. He then reveals he was out preparing something special for them, holding up a bag. At that, the girl catches a delicious scent coming from the bag and asks what's inside. He replies that it's something she adores, and her eyes light up with excitement at the surprise. But the protagonist surprises her even more by saying it's something she likes even more than bread. The scene shifts to show the gold one on a TV show, being introduced as a global pop star. With a bright smile, she thanks the host for having her and waves to the cheering audience. The host asks if she's familiar with the show, and she confirms with a smile. He then explains that renowned chefs will cook the guest's favorite dish on the spot. The man asks for her favorite food, joking that he thought she only drank morning dew. The young woman laughs, saying she's a person too, and doesn't just live on such simple things. With a radiant smile, she prepares to reveal her all-time favorite food. Next, 2 boxes of fried chicken and a soda appear in front of them. The redhead questions how it could be her favorite food when she's never even seen it before. The blonde declares it will be her favorite from now on, and the man mutters that the whole scene is so dramatic. The green-haired girl calls out to him, asking if he isn't going to eat with them, but he declines. With a general expression, she insists, saying he really should eat with all of them. But the regressor ignores her plea and steps out onto the balcony to take an important call. On the line, a person introduces themselves as being from the academic office and confirms his identity. The caller then reveals they are calling because a small issue arose during the interview process. He asks what the problem is, and the person on the other end mentions the name Yubaum. The caller reveals that Cadet Yubaum achieved a perfect score in her selection interview. The interviewers were full of praise and recommended she deliver the oath at the entrance ceremony. The problem, however, is that the girl declined the offer while eating chicken with her friend. The man refuses to even consider persuading her, stating that her wishes are his wishes. With that, he ends the call just as the red-haired girl appears behind him on the balcony. She asks about the call, and the regressor corrects her, telling her to call her friend Bomb. The redhead thinks the name is cheesy and asks if he's trying to play house, but he just questions her back. Cigarette in hand, the young woman remains silent for a moment, studying the man. She finally asks why he's sending all of them to school. Yujite replies it so they can do whatever they want, but the redhead retorts that she just wants to fight. She asks if there are strong people there, and he confirms there are, but reminds her that she's still a kid. Her red eyes gleam with a fierce determination and a burning desire to fight everyone. With a swift motion, the girl extinguishes her cigarette on the balcony railing. Without missing a beat, the young woman challenges him to a serious fight just once. She wants to know just how powerful he really is and demands he show her his true strength. The protagonist simply gives her his usual tired, unimpressed look. He ignores her, telling her to go inside and eat some chicken, which infuriates the girl. Angrily, the redhead flips him off and mutters a string of insults. The blonde tries to offer her some chicken, but her friend screams that she's not eating anything and has a meltdown. In a rage, she bites down hard on a piece of chicken and tells her friends to eat the stupid thing. But suddenly, her eyes widen in shock at the food's unexpected flavor. Gazing up at the starry sky, the redhead admits that the chicken tastes absolutely insane. The scene changes, introducing us to the Lair, an educational institution situated on a floating island. This is an academy for superhumans, designed to train children blessed with special abilities. However, the cadets educated here are predominantly the children of wealthy and prestigious families. As a result, the school faces heavy criticism for fostering a world exclusive to the privileged. Back in the present, the Gold One exclaims that the Lair is an amazing school that only the rich can attend. The Green One speculates that maybe Mr. Ujiayate is a wealthy heir, which would explain his lavish spending. The blonde celebrates the fact that they all passed, adding that she's happy because the uniform is really pretty. She then realizes that Summer and Mr. Uji are with them at the moment. The Green One explains that her friend went to the Blue Dragon Academy for a practical exam. At the Lair, guardians are required to accompany the future superhumans to keep them in check. She also reveals that Summer's evaluation involves a combat test between the cadets. Excited, the Gold One declares that if something like that is happening, they should definitely go watch. But her friend brings her back down, saying they weren't allowed to spectate the fight. The Green One explains they were told it would be too chaotic if all of them went to the venue together. As they walk, other students murmur about the new girls and their stunning beauty. The scene then shifts, taking us to the Shankian Hall of the Blue Dragon Academy. Inside, two men are engaged in intense duel, their staffs clashing in fierce combat. The fight between the cadets rages on until one is defeated by a powerful strike from a staff. The venue is enormous, with several other matches happening simultaneously in different arenas. In the audience, anxious guardians watch on, one of them yelling at his cadet to fight properly. A gray-haired man urges for calm, noting that their shouting could make the cadets even more nervous. He then approaches the protagonist and the other guardians to introduce himself. The man introduces himself as Wai Yun, the head professor of the Blue Dragon Academy. With a confident smile, he says he eagerly looks forward to working with the guardians. The others respond enthusiastically, but our protagonist remains silent, merely observing. On the side, others whisper that the professor is a wealthy war hero with a great personality. Suddenly, a voice announces the next match, calling for numbers 124 and 7. The redhead steps into the arena, warning that if the fight is boring, her opponent will regret it. Across from her, a blonde girl returns her stare with a serious and determined expression. With a smirk, the red-haired girl says she's just planning on running away from home after her victory. In the stands, students begin placing their bets on the match between the two girls. One of them asks his friend who he's betting on, and he replies that the redhead is his type. The other calls him an idiot, and he quickly corrects himself, saying that obviously the winner will be Sophia. He explains that even before becoming a KDET, the blonde was already part of an organization. That organization is the REL, a Russian special forces unit that played a key role in the Great War. It's infamous for its brutal training methods, which border on physical torture. A man shouts at the girl, reminding her that the higher-ups have great expectations for her. Sophia's guardian desperately yells for her to win the fight, leaving the girl mortified by the scene. The redhead seizes the opportunity to taunt her, remarking that her daddy seems very worried about his little girl. She then suggests the blonde should just give up and run to her father's arms, calling her daddy's little girl. The red-haired girl doesn't appreciate the taunt and tells her opponent to watch her mouth. With a dark aura, the redhead warns that if she keeps talking like that, she will definitely be done for. A chilling smile spreads across her face as she dares her to try and do something about it. The students comment on the blonde's ferocity, but admit the redhead doesn't look like an easy opponent either. From his seat, the protagonist watches as the announcer instructs the two to take their positions. The young blonde wastes no time snapping into a combat stance, ready for battle. On the other side, the red-haired girl faces her with a confident and fearless smile. A red button is pressed, and the highly anticipated fight between the two finally begins. The blonde lunges forward with a swift and powerful punch aimed at her opponent's face. In a blur of motion, the two exchange a flurry of blows without a moment's pause. But the redhead catches her punch, complimenting the blonde girl on her speed. She immediately retaliates with her staff, but her opponent narrowly dodges the blow. The attack grazes the young woman's face as she ducks away with incredible agility. Capitalizing on the opening, the blonde counters with a powerful and precise spinning kick. The kick tears a part of the redhead's uniform, and she complains that the outfit was brand new and expensive. The red-haired girl is knocked off balance by the blow, and the blonde moves in to attack again. With that, the two face off once more, ready to continue their intense battle in the arena. The blonde lunges with a powerful punch, but the redhead dodges the attack with ease. The two continue their exchange of blows, with the redhead using her staff to defend herself. The red-haired girl dodges another attack and prepares for a counter. She kicks off the arena cage to gain momentum and launches herself toward her opponent. With an impressive leap, both fighters prepare for their next mid-air clash. The redhead attacks with her staff, a savage grin on her face during the battle. But the blonde manages to block the attack, crossing her arms in a defensive stance. A bluish energy envelopes her arms as she successfully intercepts the blow. Angrily, the blonde girl grits her teeth, glaring at her opponent with determination. Across from her, the redhead just gives a confident smirk, a victorious look in her eyes. With a swift movement, the young blonde manages to break free from the red-haired girl's attack. She then attempts to land a punch, but the red-haired dodges and the fight continues. The red-haired girl taunts her, asking if she seems any easier to defeat now. With a menacing smile, she remarks that now that she's just toying with her, the blonde seems much weaker. Without wasting a moment, the redhead lands a powerful punch squarely on the blonde girl's face. The impact is so strong that the young woman is sent sprawling onto the arena floor. With blood trickling from her mouth, the blonde girl struggles to get up, clearly injured. The redhead seizes the opportunity, preparing to end the fight with another strike. Staff in hand, she looks down at her with a smile and a look of triumph on her face. The announcer declares the end of the match and the victory for number 124, the redhead. The blonde girl is left completely shocked and in disbelief after the humiliating defeat. The redhead calls her trash, remarking that they gathered the world's so-called elites for nothing. The students are stunned to see Sophia defeated so easily. One of them notes that the redhead barely has a scratch on her and was just playing around the entire time. Other students begin to taunt the blonde girl, calling her trash for losing. As a medic tends to her, her guardian overhears others saying she only got her spot because she's pretty. Angrily, the blonde girl listens to all the malicious comments in silence, her head bowed low. The medic finishes the first aid, and the guardian thanks her with a trembling voice. But the young woman gets to her feet, declaring it's not over yet because she's still able to fight. She looks at her guardian and insists the match isn't finished and that she can continue. With a sigh, the man comforts her, saying she already did her absolute best in the fight. He tells her that her current strength isn't enough to beat the redhead, but that he isn't disappointed. The guardian consoles her, saying that this loss might actually be a blessing in disguise for her. With a smile, he explains that the experience of defeat is what makes a person even stronger. He says he will handle the report for his superiors, but the medic interrupts him. The blonde girl rises, a knife now in her hand, insisting she hasn't given up the fight. A blue aura envelopes her hand as she prepares to attack with renewed energy. She screams at the redhead that the fight isn't over and asks where she thinks she's going. In a flash, the blonde charges forward with incredible speed toward her opponent. The two prepare for another direct clash, their auras flaring brightly. From the audience, the protagonist watches the scene with a cold, emotionless expression. Angrily, the redhead curses her opponent and readies herself for the next round. The blonde girl screams and lunges with all her might, ready to end the fight once and for all. In the stands, the students are completely shocked by the battle's intensity. The professors and guardians also watch the scene unfold with expressions of surprise and fear. Ujete remains calm and indifferent, as if the fight were nothing out of the ordinary for him. With a blue aura, the two collide in a powerful, energy-filled strike. The impact is so strong that both are thrown back across the battle arena. Lying on the ground, the redhead clutches her bloodied knife and glares at her opponent with rage. With a smirk, she asks if the girl is trying to start a real fight now. But suddenly, the redhead notices something is off, and her expression changes in an instant. The blonde charges forward with a blue aura, yelling that she's going to finish her for good. With a powerful kick, she tries to strike the red-haired girl but misses. The red-haired manages to grab her by the hair, stopping her surprise attack in its tracks. Wincing in pain, the young blonde grits her teeth and glares at her opponent with fury. With a red aura flaring, the red-haired girl declares that the fight is over for her. She then delivers a devastating punch right to the blonde girl's face with all her strength. Her eyes glow with an intense red energy as she lands the final blow. The students are horrified by the scene, and one of them suggests they need to stop the fight. The redhead throws the blonde to the ground and then takes down several other students who try to intervene. The blonde girl collapses to the floor, completely defeated and unconscious after the assault. But the redhead knows the fight isn't over, as her opponent managed to wound her earlier. With a red aura, she says she's going to repay the favor for the injury she received. But before she can act, Sophia's guardian grabs her arm forcefully. He yells at her to stop, and the girl curses him, demanding he let her go immediately. The head professor shouts for the mages to create a containment space and pauses the interview on the spot. With that, several men in white robes appear and use their powers to erect a barrier. They prepare to contain the situation and prevent the red-haired girl from attacking further. A blue energy barrier forms and everyone is transported to a new location. The redhead tosses the knife to the ground, complaining about being the only one getting reprimanded. She points at the guardian, arguing that it was his girl who attacked her first. The man claims she could have simply subdued her opponent, but the redhead tells him to shut up. The head professor intervenes, asking for calm as tensions are running high. He informs her that an assistant has gone to fetch her guardian and suggests she try to calm down. But the young woman retorts that she's about to explode with anger, and the professor says he understands her feelings. The red-haired girl gives him a confused look and asks what he means by that. The professor threatens her, saying that if she continues, her actions could harm her family. With a chilling smile, he mentions that she isn't the only one belonging to the Yu family. He displays images of the other girls, threatening the redhead with her friend's well-being. With that, he asks if she would feel alright if her friends were to suffer because of her. The professor continues his threat, but the protagonist appears, announcing they need look no further. He suddenly materializes, revealing himself as the girl's guardian and leaving the professor stunned. Ujete confronts him, telling him to stop threatening an injured child and to direct his words to him. The redhead is surprised by his arrival, and the head professor seems equally shocked. With a serious expression, the red-haired girl looks at her guardian, saying nothing. The scene shifts to show the academy building now encased in a powerful magic barrier. In a room, the professor offers Tawny's tea to the two guardians present. With a smile, he remarks that the tea brings peace to the mind, attempting to de-escalate the situation. He thinks to himself that he's never heard of the Yu family, but he can tell the man is a high ranker. The professor decides he must investigate this man and his mysterious family more thoroughly. With that, he begins the conversation, apologizing for the incident that occurred in the arena. The two guardians stare at each other in silence as the professor tries to mediate. He points out on the bright side, neither girl was seriously injured and the redhead has already been discharged. The professor suggests they resolve this on good terms, assuring them he'll handle the rest. Sophia's guardian simply observes him with his arms crossed and a serious expression. He then apologizes and introduces himself as Mikhailov, the guardian of young Sophia. He explains that she is young and immature and her emotions got the better of her. But the protagonist cuts him off, stating he will not accept an apology from him. Surprised, the man slams his hand on the table, and the regressor explains he sees no point in a disingenuous apology. Angrily, the guardian questions him, asking if he's acting this way because he doesn't know who he is. UJT says their positions aren't the same and questions the sincerity of the man's apology. Furious, the guardian yells, asking if he's expected to drag a sick child all the way here. The regressor coldly replies that if he truly wants to apologize, then yes, that's exactly what he should do. Sensing the rising tension, the head professor asked both guardians to calm down. But the protagonist reveals the real problem wasn't the girl, but the man's failure to stop her. Irritated, the other guardian shouts back, defending himself by saying the situation was too sudden. UJT looks at him with contempt and calls it a pathetic excuse. He continues asking if the other man has no shame, using a child to cover for his own incompetence. At that, Mikhailov grabs him by the collar, warning that his patience has a limit. Enveloped in a blue aura, he asks if the man wants to make an enemy of the Ryle. He then scoffs, saying the Yu family is a name he's never even heard of. Suddenly, the Russian guardian's eyes widen in complete shock. The regressor is now holding his knife, remarking that its inner blade is sharp and could have been dangerous. He points to the loose sheath, explaining that's how the girl got the knife, which stuns the man. With a dark gaze, the protagonist simply looks at him and speaks his name, Mikhailov. In a vision, he appears behind the guardian, advising him to stick to crowded streets from now on. Face beaded with sweat, the Russian guardian glares at him with a mix of pure fear and rage. The protagonist then stands announcing that since their conversation is over, he'll be leaving. As the regressor walks away, the other man remains silent, utterly defeated. A chilling smile plays on the head professor's face, as if he found the whole ordeal highly amusing. The protagonist simply turns and begins to walk out of the meeting room. Outside, the red-haired girl is waiting for him with a serious expression. He asks how she's doing, and she replies it was just a scratch, as her clan is resilient. With a bandage on her cheek, the redhead stays quiet, seeming to ponder the situation. She then looks at him and asks if he also thinks she was in the wrong during the fight. The young woman turns away, wondering if this whole mess was her fault in the end. Angrily, she says it feels unfair but questions if perhaps she should have acted more maturely. But the man surprises her by saying she did well, leaving the girl confused by his response. With a cold look, he advises that next time, she should handle her opponent without any witnesses. The regressor then turns and continues walking, leaving the young woman behind to process his words. A smile spreads across the red-haired girl's face. She seems to have really liked his advice. Running to catch up, she tells him not to regret it later, and he confirms that he won't. The officer then tells the redhead to pack her things, and she asks where they are going. He reveals they'll be moving to the lair, and she asks if he means the dormitories. The girl leans in close, a curious expression on her face, trying to understand what's happening. Suddenly, the head professor appears with a smile, asking for a moment of the guardian's time. The man says their discussion is over, but the professor insists it's about the cadet. The redhead groans that she doesn't want another lecture, but the professor says he has a great offer for her. He then invites her to be the freshman representative, leaving her shocked by the idea. He explains she would be the face of the academy, receiving a scholarship, artifacts, and media fame. The protagonist questions the proposal, asking if the professor has the authority to make such an offer, but the man reassures him. He reveals a connection to the vice director, and the regressor gives him a dark look. The professor urges him to think it over carefully, as he won't find another opportunity like this elsewhere. The officer thinks to himself that he certainly has a connection, since both he and the vice director are demons. It's revealed that demons are humans who, instead of receiving a blessing, embrace the abyss. They crave blind rage, the annihilation of humans, and pure, unadulterated destruction. Because of these demons, the world faced a grave threat and the man lost precious things. That's why, when the professor first appeared before him, he was filled with an immense hatred. UJT has imagined ending him countless times for what happened in his past lives. But he held back time and time again because that man needs to suffer greatly before his end. Back in the present, the protagonist says he understands what the professor is offering. However, he believes the girl's opinion is what matters most, as he is merely her guardian. The professor agrees, saying that ultimately, the choice rests with the cadet and he won't interfere. He then turns to the redhead, saying many things are about to change and he wants her to lead an event. With a smile, he asks if she would help him paint the future of the academy by his side. But the red-haired girl surprises him and, with a cute expression, says she doesn't want to. The man, shocked, asks if he heard her correctly, and the young woman confirms that he did. She then says they should go home and prepare for the move, prompting the professor to ask why she was even there. The girl calmly replies that she was just lying in her room, not really doing anything. The man stares at her, confused, and asks what happened after that. With a yawn, the girl says she got bored, so she figured she'd pick a fight. The professor glares at her with a dark smile, looking thoroughly irritated by her response. He then looks out the window with a thoughtful expression, as if he's plotting something. The protagonist gets the redhead's attention and tells her to look down, leaving her confused. Below, she sees a crowd of reporters with cameras and asks what's going on. The man explains they are journalists from all over the world, waiting for his statement on the incident. With a smile, he threatens her, saying her entire academic life hinges on a single word from him. But the young woman rejects the offer again and leaves with her guardian, leaving the professor stunned. He watches them walk away in silence, seemingly in disbelief at what just transpired. With a menacing glare, the professor says he truly hopes they won't regret their decision. Outside, a reporter is completely astonished to see the red-haired girl emerge. Instantly, all the journalists swarm her, bombarding her with questions about the fight. The young woman is overwhelmed by the flashing cameras, looking extremely annoyed by the situation. One reporter tells her the video of her fight has gone viral and asks if she was trying to get attention. They continue to hound her, asking why she enrolled and what her plans are, leaving her speechless. The officer tries to shield her, but the redhead stops him, saying she'll answer their questions. She then grabs a reporter's microphone and asks if they really want to know what she's going to do. With a wicked smile, the red-haired girl gives a very direct and shocking response. The scene then changes, showing a beautiful view of the futuristic city that houses the academy. Next, we see the luxurious dormitory within the lair, where the students will now be living. Upon arriving at the dorm, the gold one is completely mesmerized by their new home. Both she and the redhead are impressed by the size of the living room, wondering if this is really where they'll live. The blonde girl then sprints for the stairs, shouting that the best room will be hers, and the other follows. With a curious peek, the young woman looks through a doorway to see what's inside. Her eyes turn to stars as she sees how unbelievably luxurious the room is. She steps inside, shocked, wondering if a place like this isn't too good for her. The girl explores the room, falling in love with the massive bed, the modern TV, and the bright sunlight. With a smile, the young woman looks at herself in the mirror and decides she's going to make the most of this room. But the redhead appears behind her with a cigarette, remarking that the balcony is a perfect spot for a smoke. The gold one protests that it's not fair, as her friend had already claimed the other, larger room. At that, Summer agrees to take the other room, and the blonde accepts her friend's decision. Elsewhere, the green one is carefully and lovingly misting a large blue egg with water. She sits on a cushion, continuing to tend to the egg with a serene look on her face. With a gentle smile, she greets the egg as if she were speaking to her own child. The protagonist appears, and she explains it's like prenatal education since blue dragons love water. It's revealed that when the egg is close to hatching, the polymorph enchantment will automatically dissolve. The green-haired girl then mentions that the lair is buzzing with news about the redhead. She says the interview her friend gave has become a very hot topic among the cadets. A screen displays the news report, and the green one asks the baby if it also heard the naughty word. The redhead lounges on the sofa while the gold one asks what the word she used actually means. Lying back, the redhead asks if the blonde really wants to know what it means. With a mischievous grin, she says of course she knows and offers to give her friend a little lesson. The gold one panics and refuses the lesson, saying her mother taught her not to be overly curious. But Summer teases her and, with a scary expression, says her friend has no right to refuse. With that, the redhead begins her explanation, leaving the blonde girl utterly terrified. Desperate, the gold one screams and begs her friend to stop, promising she'll listen to everything. She then cries out for help, calling for the mister, while the green one and he simply watch the scene unfold. The scene then shifts to a beautiful, sunny day with birds chirping in the trees. In her room, the red-haired girl sleeps soundly in her bed, enjoying the peaceful morning. Sunlight streams on her face, and she appears to be in a deep, relaxing sleep. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps can be heard rushing up the stairs toward her room. The gold one bursts in, yelling for her sister to wake up because it's an emergency, but the redhead just groans. Summer complains about the noise, and her friend asks if she was up late watching weird things again. With a sly smile, the redhead says no. She was actually watching something else entirely. The gold one yanks her out of bed, insisting something else is more important, and Summer threatens her. Still half asleep, the red-haired girl asks what could possibly be so important. In the living room, she finds everyone gathered and questions the reason for all the commotion so early. With a serious expression, the green one turns to her friend and calls her by her new name, Summer. She then reveals that winter is about to be born, and at that moment the large blue egg begins to tremble. The egg starts to glow brightly and crack, finally ready to hatch for everyone to see. They all watch in wonder and excitement as the egg hatches right before their eyes. But the protagonist recalls that the last birth he witnessed was anything but beautiful. That dark memory from his past was a far cry from a pleasant sight. In one of his previous lives, he had looked much more exhausted and worn down by the constant war. He remembers a hand reaching out in desperation as someone pleaded for help. A woman begged him to save her baby, but his companion told him it was already too late. The mother wept, clutching the lifeless infant, as the other explained he had passed just after being born. The conditions were terrible, as the hospital had been completely destroyed in the fighting. The man thinks that if there had been a proper facility nearby, the child might have survived. Back in the present, he wonders why he's recalling that horrific moment now. The red-haired girl just stares at the cracking egg with a surprised expression. With that, a tiny blue dragon paw finally breaks through the shell. Next, a small wing pokes out as the egg continues to break apart slowly. Then, the little blue dragon's head emerges from the egg with a very cute and shy look. With a smile, the green one congratulates the baby on its birth, and the gold one is captivated by the scene. The little dragon named Winter fully emerges from the egg and shyly covers face. Using a cloth, a green-haired girl gently and carefully cleans the baby dragon's face. He questions her, and she explains her mother did this for her, but the traditional way would be to lick him clean. She asks if he wants to hold the baby, but the man declines, so the gold one eagerly volunteers. The green one hands a little dragon to her friend, warning her to be careful with his fragile skin. Cradling the baby, the gold one remarks that the moment feels incredibly comforting and relaxing. Her eyes sparkle with joy as she savors the moment with the newest member of their family. With a playful smile, she teases her friend, asking if the redhead doesn't want to hold the baby too. The blonde then places the dragon in her startled friend's lap, and the green one urges her to be gentle. Just then, the little blue dragon lets out an adorable yawn, making the scene even cuter. The red-haired girl holds the baby carefully, looking at the creature with sheer surprise. The blonde asks if she gets it now, and the redhead admits that the little dragon is actually pretty cute. Then, both of them turn to the man and ask why he doesn't hold the baby for a little while. With a smirk, Summer teases him, asking if he's deliberately playing hard to get. She then threatens to toss the baby fur and to catch, and the gold one panics at the crazy idea. The redhead reveals that her goal all along has been to see his serious expression finally crack. With a wick grin, she throws the baby into the air, and the blonde screams in terror. But the protagonist catches the baby with ease, and the gold one praises him for the excellent reception. The redhead complains that it was no fun, and the blonde thinks her older sister is definitely not normal. The green one then suggests that since he's holding the baby, he should give him a little pat. The regressor gazes down at the tiny creature in his arms, silently processing the request. With a gentle movement, his hand draws near, and he pets the baby dragon on the head. He then asks if he's doing it right, and the little dragon seems to be enjoying the affection immensely. Just then, the gold one snaps a photo of the scene, declaring that a moment like this has to be documented. The green one suggests a group photo, and the man asks why she has a flower in her hand. With a winking smile, the green one explains the flower is a prop for the photo, much to the other's confusion. She then places the rose behind the protagonist's ear and a blue flower on the baby dragon's head. With that, the man stares at the camera with a rose behind his ear, holding the decorated little dragon. The green one asks how it looks, and the gold one says they match perfectly, but the officer just tells her to take the picture already. The man grumbles that being in the photo is embarrassing, but the gold one calls for Summer to join them. Excitedly, the gold one gets ready to take the picture and starts a countdown to capture the moment. And so, the family photo is taken with everyone gathered to celebrate the birth of Winter. Afterward, as the little dragon Winter drinks from a bottle, the green one asks if he's ready. The man questions her plans, and she explains she's gonna teach the baby polymorphism. Magic transfer works by directly passing mana from one individual to another. The recipient of the magic pays no price, but the one transferring it risks their own life force in the process. The officer asks if she'll be alright, and she explains it's difficult to leave the house in dragon form. She reveals that she and the others learned polymorphism in their original homeland. But the young woman explains that little Winter hasn't yet learned the skill of transformation. She says that dragons grow up quickly, so she wants to give the baby as many good experiences as she can before that happens. The man agrees to help, and she playfully teases that he doesn't know much about magic. With a smile, the green-haired girl then says she actually has a favor to ask of him. She requests that the protagonist stay right beside her while she performs the magic transfer. He agrees, but she beckons him closer, telling him not to be shy. The man, however, refuses to move any closer, stating he sees no reason to be right next to her. She explains that if she becomes exhausted and drops the baby, he'll be close enough to catch him. The young woman continues her dramatic plea, saying she couldn't live with the guilt if little Winter were to get hurt. The protagonist lets out a tired sigh, seemingly giving into her emotional blackmail. Without a word, the officer sits down beside her on the sofa to ensure the baby's safety. With a blush on her cheeks, the green-haired girl gets flustered by his proximity and says it's difficult. He questions her, and she quickly clarifies that she meant the sofa is a bit hard and uncomfortable. The man finds this odd, as the material is top quality, and the young woman looks very nervous with her excuse. She then closes her eyes and begins the magic transfer of green aura enveloping her. The scene shifts and several days pass in the luxurious and modern dormitory of the Lair Academy. Exhausted, the green-haired girl collapses onto the sofa, announcing the long process is finally complete. He praises her for job well done, and she thanks him for his help during the magic transfer. Drained, the young woman says she's gonna rest, reminding him to burp Winter after his feeding. But as she tries to stand, she stumbles and nearly falls, overcome by extreme fatigue. With wide eyes, the girl loses her balance, realizing she's about to pass out. Before she can hit the floor, the protagonist catches her in his arms with a swift movement. Holding the young woman, the man says he'll carry her to her room so she can rest. Surprised and blushing, the green-haired girl looks up at her guardian without saying a word. He then lifts her like a princess, and she jokes that the situation is a little embarrassing. She asks if she's heavy, and he replies that she's light as he carries her to her room. Finally, the young woman is sleeping peacefully in her bed after a tremendous effort. The protagonist watches the girl sleeping and carefully closes the bedroom door. He then walks down the hallway, apparently heading somewhere important. Suddenly, a powerful blue energy flares up, catching the attention of the man as he passes by. Startled, he quickly turns to see what's happening and where the light came from. With wide eyes, he wonders if the polymorphism process could have finished so quickly. The blue energy swirls around the room, and then a new figure appears seated on the living room sofa. The man approaches and sees a little blue-haired girl staring at him with a shy expression. The newly transformed young girl seems a bit frightened by her new form. In her human shape, the little blue dragon shrinks back on the sofa with a cute and curious look. The regressor is left completely speechless by the scene, his reaction one of pure astonishment. With a bead of sweat on his brow, he looks at the little girl and can only manage a timid king. The scene then shifts to the district police station where his clone is working. His colleagues are commenting that he caught criminals the investigation team couldn't track down for months. One of them approaches with a credit card, inviting him out for a meal as a reward for his hard work. But a female colleague teases him, pointing out he's using the company card, and he deflects the comment. The man says he has something to do and leaves, surprising the others with his abrupt departure. His colleagues complain that he's been acting suspiciously and ask if he's gotten a girlfriend. With a distant look, the man denies the accusation, saying it's nothing like what they're thinking. He then says his goodbyes and leaves as his colleagues shout after him, asking if he hates them. The scene closes with a beautiful view of the city, its green trees and modern buildings. On the street, a black-haired woman is talking with a friend on her holographic communicator. She's telling her friend how she told some guy to stop contacting her like a loser. But it's revealed that the one working in the officer's place is his clone, the shadow of the Archduke. This was an ability of the Archduke from the demonic realm used to influence various duchies. But after the protagonist defeated him, the ability became his own. The scene changes to show a black-haired woman walking through the city with a serious expression. She then spots the man she's been looking for, sitting alone on a park bench. With that, she approaches him and greets him very formally, addressing him as my sovereign. With wide eyes, the woman seems taken aback by the way the man has addressed her. Sitting on the bench, the officer is holding little Winter and asks what the formal address means. He explains he's just returning from the salon, and the woman realizes the child has undergone polymorphism. An elderly couple walks by, commenting on what a lovely couple the two of them make. Flustered, the agent offers to hold the child for him if she's being a bother. But the little blue dragon glares at her with a look of suspicion and a hint of anger. The woman is left completely stunned and speechless by the little girl's intimidating stare. He says it's fine because the child can walk, and she then sits down next to him. She questions him, asking why the other girls aren't with him at the moment. The man reveals that UBOM is unwell due to the side effects of the magic transfer. He adds that it's still a bit difficult to manage the other two girls right now. The agent understands and, with a serious look, asks what he wanted to discuss with her. He pretends not to know what she's talking about, then chides her for playing dumb. With an awkward expression, the agent seems to be processing her master's words. She then clarifies that it's not a complaint, but a question regarding the mission she was given. The agent explains that of all who have commanded her before, none have ever desired a normal, peaceful life. They used her for more significant tasks like eliminating those who needed to be dealt with, or they would dispatch her to places where a show of power and influence was required. But since the sovereign of this regression only wants a normal life, she can't understand his motives. He tells her it's natural for her to think that way, as she is after all her own person. The man reassures her that there will be work for her soon, and until then, she should focus on her current job. He also mentions that her team was disappointed and suggests she go out for a drink with them. Furthermore, he informs her that she will have to say goodbye to them soon, and she looks at him in silence. The agent understands the message and bids him a formal farewell as she departs. The protagonist simply watches her leave with his usual wary expression, saying nothing. With a serious look, he turns to little Winter and asks if she wanted that very badly. Nearby, a mother tells her daughter she would have bought the gift sooner if she had known how much she wanted it. The little girl hugs her new panda teddy bear with immense happiness and gratitude. With sparkling eyes, little Winter watches the scene with an expression of pure admiration. The regressor notices the little girl's gaze and, in a calm voice, asks if she wants a doll. Using his ability, he summons something from the shallowest part of the abyss for the girl. He then produces a blue teddy bear, explaining it's a bit different from the other one she saw. Little Winter takes the blue teddy bear and hugs it, a look of surprise on her face. The toy looks incredibly soft and cuddly, and the little girl stares at it with admiration and affection. With a blush on her cheeks and sparkling eyes, the young girl seems to have adored the unexpected gift. The man then moves closer to her and, in a calm voice, asks if she likes her new toy. But suddenly, the little girl drops the teddy bear on the ground, leaving the officer confused. She then walks toward him and looks up at him silently as if she wants something else. He picks her up and asks if she wants anything else, but warns her this was the last thing. With a determined look, the little blue dragon stares at him intently, not breaking eye contact. With her tiny hand, she holds the man's face in a delicate and unexpected gesture. She then brings her face close to his and closes her eyes, as if about to give him a kiss. The little girl presses her forehead against his, and the protagonist wonders why she's acting this way. He then remembers Yubom performing the magic transfer for the baby dragon earlier. With that, the regressor questions if the little one thinks this is a form of affection. He recalls one of his past lives, filled with pain and incredibly difficult moments. In his other regressions, he had only known violence and the struggle against monsters and demons. Because of this, he became a cold and distant person with little room for affection. His life had always been a constant battle against dragons and other powerful, cruel creatures. As a result, he never had the chance to learn or express feelings like love and warmth. With his eyes closed, the man seems to be processing the little girl's gesture of affection. He holds her in his arms while the teddy bear lies forgotten on the park ground. With a confused look, little Winter pulls away from him, seemingly not understanding his reaction. With a faint smile, he kneels down and gently moves her hand away from his face. He then takes the little girl's hand, while her other hand clutches his clothes tightly. Against a pink-hued sky, the two walk hand in hand through the park in a quiet moment. The man looks up at the sky with a thoughtful expression, sensing something strange in the air. Suddenly, he stops walking and stares at the sky as if anticipating something. With a serious look, he wonders if they're already on their way, and the little girl looks up at him, confused. At that moment, the gold one appears, waving at them with a radiant smile. She runs up to them and embraces little Winter, exclaiming how cute she is in her human form. With a tight hug, the blonde seems overjoyed to see the little blue dragon transformed. She asks if Winter was happy with the mister's gift, and the little girl just looks at her silently. The man then asks if she can read the little one's thoughts, and the blonde explains how it works. In short, she says it's a form of physical contact used to express feelings between them. With a playful smile, the gold one teases the mister, asking if there's anything he still doesn't know about them. The regressor then changes the subject, asking what the blonde girl is carrying on her back. With an awkward smile, she reveals what's inside the large case she's carrying. The young woman shows off a guitar, saying she bought it to convey her soul without needing skin-to-skin contact. With that, she begins to play and sing enthusiastically, remarking that she feels like a real singer. The gold one continues her private concert, declaring she'll do her best to impress everyone. The protagonist just watches her in silence with his usual tired and indifferent expression. The man then has a terrifying vision of the future, seeing a shattered guitar and syringes on the floor. In the vision, the gold one is injured and surrounded by chaos as he watches from a distance. Back in the present, the regressor is visibly shaken by the dark memory. The young blonde from the vision stares at him with an empty, lifeless gaze that deeply unnerves him. He snaps back to reality, having apparently had a terrible premonition of the future. The girl complains that her fingers hurt from playing so much, and the man looks at her with concern. He then advises her not to push herself too hard, and she looks at him a bit confused. She asks for the reason, but he just tells her to take it easy and not overdo it. The officer observes her for a moment, then asks if Yubom has woken up from her deep sleep. The blonde explains she's still sleeping, having overexerted herself during the magic transfer. With a serious look, he asks about Yubom and what she's up to. The gold one reveals that the redhead is hooked on a drama series and hasn't left her room all day. She remarks it's the first time she's ever seen her friend obsessed with anything other than fighting. As they arrive at the dormitory, the blonde reminds little Winter to wash her hands thoroughly. The protagonist remains silent, a dark and determined look on his face. The gold one then asks him if Yubom should have woken up by now. With a swift movement, the man places a hand on her shoulder, stopping her. He tells her to take Winter into her room and not to come out until he says so. With a serious and menacing look, the regressor orders the young woman to hurry. Startled, the blonde girl agrees and obeys her guardian's command without question. The gold one picks up Winter, telling her it's time to read a story with her big sister. With a grave expression, the protagonist watches the two of them enter the room in silence. He stands still for a moment, a dark look on his face. With that, the man approaches Yubom's door and grips the handle. He then slowly opens the door and steps inside to check on the girl. But upon entering the room, the regressor is struck silent by what he finds. He sees several armored guardians lying defeated on the floor, with one still standing. The armored guardian confronts the man, demanding to know who left the green dragon in such a state. With his eye glowing, He directly asks if the officer was the one responsible. It's revealed that dragons use magical collars on humans to turn them into their guardians. Through this, they become knights and slaves bound to protect the dragon's nests. The strongest among them serve as bodyguards for the hatchlings when they venture out to play. Inside the room, the guardians watch over the green-haired girl sleeping in her bed. The protagonist wonders if the guardian has placed a sleeping spell on you. Bomb. Angrily, the armored knight steps forward, preparing to attack the man. He shouts, demanding an answer, asking again if it was the regressor who harmed the green one. The officer says he should introduce himself first, but the guardian scoffs, thinking he doesn't understand. With a dark aura, the knight declares that asking questions is a privilege reserved for the strong. The man notices that the guardian has cast a high-level barrier spell in the room. With a serious look, the protagonist faces the knight and says he will give him one last warning. The knight demands to know what he did to the green one and tells the human to answer immediately. But the protagonist calmly replies that a blue dragon was just born here. He explains that the green one overexerted herself teaching polymorphism, which is why she collapsed. At this, the armor guardian stares at him and asks who he truly is. The man introduces himself as their guardian, but the knight finds the introduction absurd. Ujte says he knows what he's protecting, which is why he's curious about the situation. He questions why they arrived so early, and the knight is shocked by the question. The guardian remarks that for a human, he knows far too much and then draws his shadowy sword. He reveals they are the children's guardians, but that the man does not seem to have good intentions. The regressor then suggests they resolve this with a good, old-fashioned conversation. But the knight tells him not to worry and lunges forward at full speed. He promises it won't hurt a bit as the other knights also move in to attack. With his purple energy sword, the guardian unleashes a powerful strike against the man. However, the protagonist parries the knight's attack with incredible ease. The guardian is utterly shocked that his sword was stopped as if it were nothing. With that, the regressor summons his intangible sword, radiating a dark and powerful energy. In the blink of an eye, he lands a powerful kick on the knight, sending him flying. One of the others calls him pathetic for being defeated by such a simple move. They then tell their leader to fall back, saying they'll finish off this human themselves. But the leader panics, warning them that the man is far stronger than they realize. With that, the knight's eye glows with a blue light, indicating he's about to use an ability. In a flashback, the protagonist is surrounded by several of these knights in battle. But in the present, all the armored guardians are defeated, lying on the bedroom floor. The leader realizes something is wrong. A mere human shouldn't know so much about them. He then understands he should have been suspicious of this man from the very beginning. With a dark aura, the knight grasps that the regressor is someone who should never be provoked. The guardian is left without his arms and legs, kneeling before the protagonist's overwhelming power. With a sigh, the man seems to have resolved the situation swiftly and efficiently. He then says he wanted to talk, and the knight asks if the world is now under his dominion. The officer tells him to answer his questions, wanting to know how they survived the portal. The knight reveals it was all due to a strange dimensional distortion they encountered. He explains that his master opened a portal for them, but something unexpected occurred. For some reason, the dimension warped and they were all ejected from the portal. The protagonist demands more details, and the knight mentions something called the Horizon of Providence. The guardian's hand then begins to slowly dissolve into a dark purple energy. He says the distortion was caused by a power emanating from this mysterious horizon. The man finds this all very strange, as this explanation never came up in his previous regressions. The concept of a Horizon of Providence is also something he's never heard of. He realizes this life is unfolding very differently. It's the first time a guardian has ever sought him out. With that, the officer asks if it was the horizon that helped them reach this place. The knight explains that a will from the Horizon of Providence guided them, and the man ponders this. He describes it as a feeling, as if someone were showing them the path to follow. This will led him, and he simply followed it, gathering the others and finding the hatchlings. With a serious look, the protagonist says he needs to verify something right now. With that, he places his hand on the knight's helmet, surprising the guardian. The officer then leans in and commands the armored guardian to look directly into his eyes. He activates his ability, the Eye of Balance, one of the 3 authorities of the Archduke of the demonic realm. With this power, he can discern truth from lies, and he uses it on the knight. Closing his eyes, the regressor confirms that everything the armored guardian has said is true. He thinks about how he has always dealt with worldly threats, fearing a problem like this might arise. The man reflects on how he has investigated and verified dimensional matters countless times. Angrily, he wonders why things he has no knowledge of keep popping up. The knight then mentions the existence beyond the horizon he spoke of earlier. He reveals that this will seem to harbor a strong resentment, almost like a curse. The Guardian believes it might be because he carries the core created by the Green Dragon's power. UJ just watches him in silence, processing all this new information. Suddenly, his hand moves with incredible speed toward the armored knight. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist strikes the Guardian, who is shocked by the action. With a precise blow, his hand phases through the knight's armor and closes around the power core. The Guardian groans in pain as the man's hand tightens around the core in his chest. In one swift, brutal motion, he tears the power core from the knight's chest. Holding the core, the protagonist realizes it is the Grandfather Clock Authority. Instantly, the ability activates, allowing him to comprehend the time flow distorted by the core. The authority proceeds to scan for hostile elements, rejecting anything that deviates from the timeline. With this newfound power, he observes the golden energy radiating from the knight's core. This energy expands and intensifies, showcasing its immense power and temporal control. Next, a golden hourglass materializes and the authority begins analyzing all external threats. He notices the authority has started to intervene, but for now, there's nothing he can do. Because of this, the man figures he has no choice but to wait and see how things unfold. The knight wonders how the light transformed into a clock and if the crisis has been averted. The regressor then questions what they'll do now, since he's handling the dragons alone. One of them explains that the magic binding in the dragons is gone, so there's no reason to stay. The official states he doesn't mind, as long as they stay out of trouble, surprising the knight. With that, the Guardians offer an awkward farewell and begin to exit the man's apartment. Silently, the protagonist watches them go, looking thoroughly exhausted by the entire ordeal. The leader, however, remains behind, stating he cannot leave, which startles the regressor. He reveals himself as a guardian of the history of causality, prompting the man to question him. Out of patience, UJT floors him with a powerful kick, causing the knight to cry out in pain. Pinning the knight with his foot, the official declares he will ask only one more time. The protagonist then glares at him coldly, inquiring if he truly intends to stay. Even pinned and defeated, the armored knight insists that leaving is absolutely not an option. A powerful aura flares around the protagonist as he prepares to shatter the knight's stubbornness. Turning, he asks one last time if the armored guardian is absolutely sure he won't leave. The regressor stares him down, a bluish aura emanating from his body. Once more, the knight confirms he cannot go as his duty is to protect Green. The others remark it's useless since their leader is incredibly stubborn and won't listen. They call him a fool for refusing freedom and tell the man to do as he pleases. For a moment, the protagonist remains silent, appearing to weigh a crucial decision. A smile spreads across his face as he announces it's all right. He seems to have found a solution. Wielding his energy sword, he swiftly dispatches the other knights, leaving them stunned. The helmet of one guardian clatters to the floor, completely shattered by the strike. The leader demands to know why he was spared, and the man clarifies he wasn't testing anyone. He then questions the knight's fierce loyalty and dedication to protecting Green. The guardian explains it's simply his unwavering allegiance to the Green clan. The official says he understands that loyalty, but he is already protecting the Green Dragon himself. The man asks what he can possibly offer as a guardian, and the knight falls silent. With a grin, the protagonist reveals there's a role that would suit him perfectly. On cue, the girls emerge from their room, and the man tells them to welcome their newest member. He then introduces the knight as their newly hired janitor, leaving him utterly shocked. The armored guardian stands speechless at his new title, unable to process what just happened. In the kitchen, the armored knight washes dishes while wearing a pair of pink rubber gloves. With a sigh of resignation, he tackles his new job clad in a pink apron. He finally questions the protagonist about the role, and the man asks if he has a problem with it. The guardian fails to see the connection between being a janitor and protecting the Green Dragon. The official reiterates that he alone is enough to protect the girl, but he made a spot for the knight. With a medicine glare, UJT warns that if he fails to do his job properly, he will be eliminated. The knight resumes washing the dishes, wondering how he got himself into this mess. Suddenly, Green appears and recognizes him. The Guardian asks if Miss Yubam is feeling alright. Smiling, she reassures him it was just a common cold and nothing to worry about. The young woman mentions hearing he'd be working as their janitor, and he confirms it's true. She then compliments him, saying the apron suits him perfectly, which catches the knight off guard. With a radiant smile, the young woman asks the new janitor to please take good care of them. Completely charmed, the armored guardian blushes beneath his helmet at her praise. Newly motivated, he eagerly grabs a plate to dry, ready to tackle his work. He tells the young lady to leave it all to him, promising she won't even have to get her hands wet. But in his enthusiasm, the knight accidentally shatters an expensive plate, leaving the girl speechless. Elsewhere, little Winter admires her reflection in a mirror, clearly loving her new outfit. Goldie then asks which outfit looks best, and he replies that Winter looks lovely in anything. From a distance, the protagonist observes the scene with his perpetually tired and indifferent gaze. The blonde chuckles, commenting that the new janitor certainly knows how to charm a crowd. The protagonist studies his own hands, seemingly lost in serious thought. He then casually mentions that Goldie is still playing the guitar, startling the girl. Green insists he's being too harsh, but the man dismisses her accusation. Changing the subject, he asks if the redhead is still binge-watching dramas in her room. The janitor reveals he tried to clean her room but was promptly kicked out, which worried him. Green guesses that her friend likely stayed up all night watching her show. A serious expression crosses the protagonist's face as he remains silent, a hint of suspicion in his eyes. He then heads toward the red-haired girl's room to see for himself what is happening. With a look of determination, the man prepares to open the door and uncover the truth. Upon entering, he's greeted by a mess of empty bottles and an overflowing ashtray. The redhead sits on the floor, drink in hand, and gives him a bored look. She asks what he wants, and he retorts that he came to check if she was still alive in there. On the TV, a scene from an epic drama shows a soldier crying out for his country and his people. The regressor asks if that's all she's been watching, and she confirms it with a question of her own. She mentions the series as 7 seasons, but he finds the story poorly written and historically inaccurate. The man suggests she stop watching, and the redhead sarcastically calls him a genius for the idea. He then tells her to come out, explaining he has something important to say, leaving her confused. With little Winter on his lap, the protagonist announces they're having a deep clean. The girls are taken aback, and Goldie demands to know the reason for the sudden dorm cleaning. He scolds them, explaining that even if they aren't human, they should still live like them on Earth. Goldie protests that her mother taught her never to enter another's nest without permission. But the protagonist counters, asking if her mother didn't also teach her to keep her own nest clean. He then instructs them to leave the living room and kitchen to the janitor and to clean their own rooms. The redhead bristles, asking why she should have to clean when they have a janitor for that very purpose. Disgustingly, the young woman picks her nose and flicks a booger at her friend, who shrieks in terror. The man then taunts Goldie for hating messes despite her own room being so chaotic. The redhead orders the janitor to clean her room while she heads out for a workout. Green announces she has already cleaned her room and is gonna buy groceries since they have more people living there now. Holding little Winter, the regressor tells her that she understands too and needs to pitch in. He is suddenly reminded of the terrible meal Green cooked for him once. The young woman asks if he'd like anything to eat, but the man declines and urges her to go. Armed with cleaning supplies, the janitor stares down the disaster zone that is the redhead's room. Wearing a mask, he remarks that he can smell the stench even without a nose. He wonders if the girl is trying to build up a tolerance to poison by living in such filth. With that, the armored guardian begins the arduous task of cleaning the room and gathering the trash. However, the protagonist's clone appears, scolding him for not sorting the recycling properly. The clone lectures him that cans and plastics must be disposed of in separate bins. The janitor mutters to himself, wondering what kind of barbaric, non-recycling place the clone came from. Annoyed, the clone rushes him, asking if he plans on taking all night to clean. The guardian agrees to get back to work, thinking the clone is so bossy he might as well be the original. The real protagonist appears, demanding to know what they're doing instead of cleaning. The clone explains that the janitor wasn't doing his job, so he was stepping in to help. Angrily, the man orders his clone to start cleaning too, since that's why he was summoned in the first place. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl pushes herself through an intense workout at the luxury dorm's gym. At the market, Green shops for groceries, carefully selecting some fresh apples to bring home. With a little help from Winter, Goldie meticulously organizes her wardrobe. As the clone and the janitor work together, the room is finally spotless. The scene transitions to the beautiful facade of the dormitory as the sun sets. The clone reports that the task is complete, and the protagonist praises his copy for a job well done. The official then pulls up a new destination on his laptop for the clone, piquing his curiosity. The location is Moscow, Russia, and the clone wonders what his assignment will be there. It's revealed that an organization is researching transcendent demons in that area. With that, the man instructs his copy to wrap up his police duties and head to Russia. His mission is to locate the command-type transcendent demon known as Prototype X. The clone acknowledges the mission and states he will prepare for the new task at once. Suddenly, the green-haired girl returns from the market announcing she's back. The janitor greets her, while Goldie expresses amazement at the sheer amount of groceries she bought. The clone then announces his departure, but the original stops him with a stern look. A grim expression settles on the protagonist's face. He has one final order for his copy. He commands the clone to switch clothes with him immediately, leaving the copy looking confused. They all dine together, and Green compliments the soup, saying it reminds her of her homeworld. All at once, the protagonist senses a strange aura and realizes someone is calling him. Outside, the clone awaits, and the original wonders why he was summoned. The scene shifts to an abandoned industrial complex, littered with wreckage. Inside, numerous bodies lie strewn across the floor, the aftermath of a fierce battle. Furious, a survivor snarls at him and prepares to lunge forward with sharp teeth. He makes a threat, but the regressor effortlessly slams him to the ground with his energy sword. The fallen man tries to threaten him again, but the official finishes him off without a shred of pity. With his energy sword in hand, he states that he knows everything, as the survivor screams in agony. He then grabs him by the hair, demanding to know the plans of Wu Yen, the demon professor. The official corrects himself, calling him the demon of invisibility and exposing his true identity. The protagonist presses him for the professor's plans, but the demon only groans in pain. Activating his eye of the scale, he warns that lies are useless against him and demands the truth. The demon finally reveals he doesn't know the specifics, but Wu Yen's plan is imminent. He explains that in 3 months, if the plan succeeds, he too could be chosen for a seat. It's revealed that these seats refer to the 4 chosen demons of the Invisibility Organization. Those who ascend to a seat are granted their own army and immense power. Holding the highest rank among demons, they achieve power on the level of a global calamity. The man finds this odd, as in the previous timeline, Wu Yen never ascended to a seat. He also recalls that at this point in time, the professor shouldn't have been strong enough for such a plan. Just then, the regression clock authority reads the malice sent from the horizon of providence. The ability scans for a being who has deviated from the timeline and identifies Wei Yao. It's revealed that an external being, displeased with the regression, has interfered. Because of this, Wu Yen has been altered from the original flow, now existing with enhanced elements from the past. The protagonist muses that first it was the Guardians, and now it's the demon professor Wu Yen. His expression serious, he wonders if this means the entity can interfere with absolutely anything. A look of understanding dawns on his face as he seems to grasp what's happening in this new regression. The demon claims it's all he knows, desperately pleading for his life and promising more information. With a deceitful smile, he insists he won't betray him and begs the man to let him love. But the protagonist takes him out without a moment's hesitation, detaching the demon's head from his body. With his eyes glowing blue, he repeats his warning that lies are ineffective. And even if it had been the truth, the man remarks the demon would have been done for anyway. Using his annihilation ability, he obliterates the abandoned building, erasing all evidence. He speculates that if Wu Yan's plan is this grand, it must be connected to the year-end event. The man recalls the professor inviting the redhead to lead the event, which now seems highly suspicious. With a look of grim certainty, he concludes that the demon's plan is tied to that event. In a park, little Winter captivates everyone with her cute and charming appearance. 2 young women approach to praise the little one's beauty, asking Green for her name. Cradling the child, Green introduces her as Yu Ji Yeo Ul, and the women agree it's a lovely name. They continue their friendly chat smiling as they ask for little Yu Ji Yeo Ul's age. Green then calls out to him, and the protagonist turns with a curious, serious expression. With an intimidating stare, he asks if they have some business with the child. Now sitting on a park bench, the young woman asks where he was all day. She explains that since she was sick, she didn't get much time to play with the little one. With classes starting tomorrow, she didn't want to miss her last chance to have some fun. The green-haired girl gazes at him with a gentle smile, a flower tucked behind her ear. The man simply watches her in silence, appearing to process her words. She playfully asks if they don't look like a little family in that moment. She gestures that little Winter is his daughter and she is the mother, as a nearby fountain sprays water. The little blue dragon looks between them with her bright eyes, seeming to approve of the idea. In this configuration, she declares it makes them a family, leaving the man speechless. The protagonist maintains his silence. His expression is wary and indifferent as ever. Awkwardly, Green insists she was only kidding and wonders why he suddenly got so serious. The man scolds her, telling her to go home if she's just gonna say weird things. He then scoops up little Winter, says their fun is over, and bids her farewell. The green-haired girl simply watches him walk away, a serene smile on her face. The scene transitions to a beautiful orange sky filled with clouds and twinkling lights. We then see the grand facade of the Lair Academy, framed by cherry blossoms in full bloom. Goldie excitedly celebrates that she's finally going to school, a piece of toast hanging from her mouth. Her face flushed with happiness, she can hardly contain her excitement for the start of her school life. The blonde asks her friend which classes she has, and Green lists off a few subjects. The green-haired girl then questions why on earth she has toast in her mouth. With a knowing smile, the blonde girl says her friend doesn't quite get it. She explains that if you're rushing to school with toast in your mouth and you bump into someone, that person you run into is destined to be your partner for life. Goldie is ecstatic at the thought, dreaming of meeting her fated partner. But suddenly, she collides with the redhead, who grins at her mischievously. Summer asks if this makes her the destined partner, much to the blonde's horror. With that, the redhead snatches the toast from her friend's mouth, who lets out a desperate cry. She then asks where the mister is, recalling that he was supposed to observe their class. The young woman teases Green, asking if she doesn't suspect he's out with another woman. The green-haired girl is utterly shocked, breaking into a cold sweat at the very thought. Goldie then asks if her friend is feeling ill, noticing her sudden sweating. Just then, the blonde girl spots something unusual in the school courtyard and stares. She sees a crowd of reporters, remarking that they definitely don't look like Lair Academy cadets. Green says she's heading inside first, as reporters snap photos of the new students. One of the journalists spots their group and seems to recognize one of the girls. They identify the redhead as the cadet who defeated Sophia and made that infamous comment. Summer is reminded of her controversial declaration to the press and fumes at the memory. Immediately, reporters swarm the girl, bombarding her with questions about the interview. Furious, the red-haired girl screams at all the reporters gathered there. She challenges them, asking if the answer she gave them before wasn't clear enough. With a defiant smirk, the redhead provokes them, telling the trashy reporters to bring their worst. Back at the dorm, the janitor observes little Winter sitting silently by the door. He thinks to himself that this is a bit of a predicament, as he's never cared for a child before. The little blue dragon just stares back at him, clutching her teddy bear with a cute expression. The protagonist then informs the knight that the girls have left for school, and he will be heading out as well. He announces that it will be just the two of them at home and instructs the janitor to take good care of the little one. At the academy, the redhead's patience snaps, and she orders all the reporters to shut up at once. The armored guardian thinks that this is his most difficult task yet, and that he has no idea how to look after children. A bit shyly, he approaches the little girl and tries to get her attention in some way. The janitor explains that the others won't be back until nighttime and suggests she wait somewhere more comfortable. He tries to be gentle, but the little blue dragon only stares at him in silence, completely unresponsive. Puffing out her cheeks, the little girl turns her head away, seeming to ignore the guardian completely. Feeling the pressure, the knight starts to sweat, finding it hard to breathe in the tense standoff. Giving up for the moment, he decides to start cleaning, while the little one watches him from a distance. In the living room, the armored guardian notices a few toys scattered across the floor. An idea seems to strike him and he pauses for a moment, lost in thought. He then approaches the little girl once more, calling her name to get her attention. Holding a book, the janitor invites her to read a story with him to help pass the time. Relieved, he assumes the little one must be interested in fairy tales and decides to read to her. Her eyes sparkling, the little blue dragon excitedly comes closer to hear the story. With that, the two sit down on the living room floor to begin reading the book. The title of the story the knight has chosen is My Daddy is a Fairy, which seems sweet. The story begins once upon a time in a very old and distant forest, but the knight imagines a grim forest from the age before the demon realms rise. The little girl looks at him in deadpans that if that's the case, Dulcuni must be a warmonger. The story continues, saying that little Dulcuni lived there with her father in a small cottage. He assumes her mother was taken out and thinks the girl is lucky to even have a father in that era. The knight tries to proceed with the story, but the little girl seems to be on a different wavelength. The book says that every night her father told Dulcini ancient tales before she slept. But the knight pictures these stories being about the Great War, filled with violence. The tale continues, revealing that one morning, Dulcini woke to find her father had vanished. The knight speculates he went to find a new wife, since taking war captives was common. He thinks the girl would be thrilled to have a new mother, but the image he conjures is horrifying. At this, the little blue dragon stares at him with an expression of pure shock and disapproval. He asks why she's giving him that look and wonders if the story isn't to her liking. Clutching her teddy bear, the little girl points decisively toward the television. She keeps pointing at the TV, insisting that the janitor look in that direction. As the night turns, little Winter begins watching a cartoon on the screen. At the Lair Academy, a girl with purple hair steps out of a luxury car, accompanied by her bodyguard. Two students observe her arrival, surprised to see the young Harris on campus. Nearby, the protagonist watches the scene unfold from inside his car, completely unnoticed. Green remembers her friends teasing and wonders if the Mr. really is with another woman. The purple-haired girl notices the reporters and wonders if they are there for her. Pulling out her makeup compact, she complains about hating to train because sweat ruins her look. She orders her bodyguard to handle the reporters, but he informs her they aren't there for her. This is Gong Joo-hee, and Hei is far more concerned with her beauty than her training. Irritated, she grabs a reporter and demands to know who they're covering instead of her. But when she looks over, the young woman is completely stunned by the scene she witnesses. One student remarks how beautiful the redhead is as she uses another cat as a human chair. Goldie asks why her friend is doing that, and the boy explains he willingly let her. He confirms he's a fan, but Summer has no idea what that word means. A reporter attempts to start the interview, but the redhead warns that without order, there will be no interview. She points to a reporter and a cat who introduces himself as being from a Taiwanese broadcast team. The young woman cuts him off and tells the next person to speak, shocking him with her bluntness. Another asks if she plans to compete, and the redhead bites his microphone, declaring it's a piece of junk. Then someone asks about her fan club. She finally understands what the boy meant and calls them all idiots. Suddenly, a reporter with a slimy smile introduces himself to her as Park Kong-ho. With a lecherous look, he asks about the phrase she had shouted at the academy before. The reporter stares at her with a disgusting grin, suggesting she had a different intention behind her words. Angrily, she tells him not to elaborate on what he's thinking right now. She says he already knows what it means and asks if his mind is filled with nothing but filth. The man claims that being young, she wouldn't understand, but that's just how journalists are. Her eyes flash as she demands to know why he's so obsessed with her choice of words. With a malicious smile, the young woman provokes him back, asking if he wants to try it with her. The camera captures the girl's furious expression, her teeth bared in pure rage. The reporter grabs her by the collar, taunting that aggressive behavior gets more views. At this, the redhead's hand clenches into a tight fist, and she tells him to say whatever he wants. Goldie pleads with her to ignore him, but her friend declares that her patience has run out. The man threatens to write the article however he sees fit, wondering how to provoke her further. Furious, she warns him he'll be taken out before that article ever gets published, alarming Goldie. But before her punch can land, a mysterious hand catches her wrist, stopping the blow. The protagonist has finally arrived, and Goldie exclaims that his timing is perfect. Enraged, the redhead tries to defend herself, insisting it wasn't her fault and that this pig provoked her. But the man ignores her protests, hoisting her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. She struggles, screaming for him to put her down, but the official simply announces the interview is over. With a dark glare, he warns the crowd that it would be best if this incident didn't appear in any articles. Shorted in a blue aura, the man walks off with a struggling redhead, leaving the reporter on the ground. Without a shred of pity, he stumps on the reporter's camera, shattering it completely. Seeing his camera destroyed, the reporter panics and says he understands the man's message loud and clear. As she's carried away, the red-haired girl looks back, her face a mask of complete shock. From a distance, the heiress remarks to her bodyguard about the mysterious protagonist's physique. She asks if her guard saw that, and suggests they look into the girl's family background. The scene shifts to a classroom where a man introduces himself as Kai, the fencing instructor. The professor calls for Goldie not to be late as the protagonist enters with the redhead. With all the students seated, Professor Kai prepares to begin the day's first lesson. He expresses surprise that she hasn't left, and the young woman retorts she's seen worse. The lesson is on the history of fencing, but the redhead complains, eager to just start fighting. She thinks that she needs to train relentlessly to one day defeat that armored knight. Bored, the girl grumbles that she's been living a pretty quiet life at the academy lately. But the protagonist reminds her she just tried to assault a reporter, which irritates her. She demands to know why he's in class with her, and he replies that she already knows the answer. The redhead gets defensive and leans in closer, but the man tells her not to get so close, as it's warm. With a mischievous grin, the young woman teases him, asking if he's getting shy. The protagonist, however, maintains his indifferent expression, completely unfazed by her provocation. Puffing out her cheeks, the red-haired girl complains that he's no fun at all. He states that studying isn't meant to be fun, and she clarifies she wasn't talking about studying, but about him. She then looks him in the eye and says that if he's going to be a kidnapper, he should at least be an entertaining one. The young woman recalls watching him fight, remarking that at first he seemed quite twisted too. Because of that, she had hoped her days would be filled with dopamine, but she's been sorely disappointed. He tells her he has the perfect remedy for her boredom, a statement that seems to confuse her. The man notes that today's events were already quite stimulating, though not what she expected. The scene changes, showing a storage shed just outside the Lair Academy. The professor notices the redhead's fidgeting and says he has a cure for her boredom. Angrily, she complains that she wanted real action, like fighting and celebrating victory with drinks. For their disruption, the professor sentences the girl and her guardian to stay after class for detention. Irritated by this turn of events, the young woman grinds her teeth, clearly displeased with the idea. Inside the shed, she cleans wooden swords with an expression of pure rage and boredom. She asks if they can't just call the janitor, but the protagonist says that he enjoys cleaning. In a fit of anger, the girl throws a sword to the ground, and the man tells her to stop complaining and clean. The young woman retorts by asking who would look after Winter if the janitor came, annoyed by his logic. She then shifts topics, asking if he was a good student, and the man replies that he never had the time for school. With a smirk, the redhead teases him, saying it's just an excuse for being unintelligent. But the protagonist reveals it was wartime, and he was too busy just trying to survive. She immediately feels bad for her joke, and the man questions her sudden change in demeanor. Sucking on a lollipop, the young woman stares at him with a serious, contemplative expression. She asks if he finds life fun, and the regressor answers not particularly. The redhead questions why someone so powerful continues to live such a boring life. The man simply states that life goes on, and he can't just abandon everything now. The redhead asks what this weird conversation is about, but he just tells her to quit chatting and get back to cleaning. The scene transitions to the beautiful facade of the dormitory under a starry night sky. In the living room, Green and Little Winter are playing with blocks while the redhead watches from a distance. Sitting on the sofa, the red-haired girl intently tries to solve a Rubik's Cube, but she seems to be struggling with the puzzle, while the janitor continues his cleaning duties. Frustrated, the young woman gives up and slaps her hand on the sofa, visibly annoyed by her failure. Green notices her friend's full mood and asks if it's because of the reporters from that morning. She replies that's part of it, but the truth is she just hasn't been having any fun lately. With a serious expression, the redhead turns to her friend and, for the first time, calls her sister. Both girls are taken aback by the red-haired girl's sudden and unusual term of endearment. All at once, she snaps at the janitor, throwing the cube at him and telling him to stop humming. Worried, Green asks if her friend is feeling sick and suggests a trip to the hospital. But the redhead ignores her and with a grave tone, asks why her sister continues to live. The green-haired girl is completely stunned that she called her sister again. Try to lighten the mood, she jokes that Summer has finally hit puberty, earning a curse from her friend. The young woman repeats the man's earlier phrase, and the others notice it sounds exactly like something he would say. Green explains that people live to experience joy. Without it, there is no reason to live. The reed head mentioned she asked the human about joy, but his answer only confused her. She explains that for Goldie, joy is as simple as eating something delicious and sweet, and for little Winter, happiness is just playing with her old, worn-out teddy bear. Green suggests that maybe he didn't tell her, but he must have something he enjoys. The redhead compares her to the man, and Green is surprised to be put in the same category. The young woman then asks if her friend finds anything fun, and the other replies that she's boring too. With a smirk, Summer declares that they are both unreadable and incredibly dull to be around. Suddenly, Green remembers something and, with a knowing smile, says there is one thing he likes. She reveals that the mister actually gets embarrassed sometimes, a thought that startles the redhead. Smiling, Green admits she also used to think he was cold, but was pleasantly surprised. Goldie comes rushing down the stairs, calling for her sister, looking thrilled about something. She then recalls the sight of the mister sitting in the park, holding little Winter on his lap. Back in the dorm, Goldie throws open the door to the man's room without knocking. In doing so, the young woman stumbles upon an unexpected scene and is shocked by what she sees. She catches him shirtless and is completely mesmerized by the sight of his chase-led abs. The scene then fades to the beautiful facade of the dorm at the break of dawn. The redhead is terrified by Green's creepy smile and screams for her mom in a panic. Goldie arrives announcing that a fan club for Summer has been officially created online. She exclaims that it's wild and that everyone in the Lair community is buzzing about the redhead. With a mischievous grin, Summer climbs on top of Green and asks if they're in the middle of something. Goldie gets flustered and tells them to finish whatever they were doing, which annoys the redhead. With a smile, Green remarks that he has a surprisingly cute side to him, despite his tough exterior. The redhead smacks her with a pillow and demands to know what this fan club thing is that the blonde mentioned. At the protagonist's room, Green calls his name and peeks through the doorway with a smile. With a slight blush, the young woman says she has a small favor to ask of him. The man gets dressed as she approaches, a mix of shyness and admiration on her face. He closes the door and tells her to come in, but she apologizes for not knocking first. Bashfully, the young woman hides behind the door, seeming to work up the courage to speak. With a confident smile, she finally faces him and asks him to accompany her for the day. The official questions her request, noting that so far, he has only accompanied Summer and little Winter. She complains that he's never once gone out with her, and the man awkwardly tries to explain. As it turns out, the redhead has a penchant for violence and starts fights with everyone at Lair Academy, and Goldie is easily swayed by anyone offering her a piece of fried chicken. The protagonist declines to go with her, and the young woman looks deeply disappointed by his response. The redhead asks where her friend is going, and Green announces she's going on a date with their uncle. Goldie is shocked by the news, but Summer dismisses it as just a routine guardian escort. Munching on a sandwich, the young blonde girl seems to be pondering something important. The blonde accuses him of playing favorites, which he denies, insisting it's not what she thinks. With a smile, Goldie says she understands and that while favoritism is bad, it's also natural. Green wonders aloud if this makes her one of the 97 abandoned ones, confusing the man. With a grim smile, the young woman likens herself to a fish that's no longer wanted after being caught. Goldie consoles her, calling him cruel for abandoning their poor green-haired sister. The blonde recounts that their mother knew 100 men but only truly liked 2 or 3 of them. The redhead says she gets why he only goes out with them and advises him to take Green out as well. The protagonist reflects that he can't just keep observing the girls from a distance forever. In an auditorium, Green introduces herself as the older sister of the renowned cadet, Urium. In the audience, guardians observe the cadets as an instructor gives directions. The scene then shifts to a large modern gymnasium within the Lair Academy. The man finally relents, and Green celebrates by hugging her friend with a triumphant smile. 2 female guardians whisper that they've never heard of the U clan, finding the name rather plain. They also note that UBOM is beautiful and achieved a perfect score in her selection interview. The teacher then instructs the cadets to form pairs, and one boy hesitates, too shy to ask anyone. With an encouraging smile, the instructor urges the students to gather their courage and ask someone they like. With the theory portion over, the teacher announces they will now practice social dancing. She explains that it would be far more embarrassing not to know how to dance later than to practice now. One of the students complains about how awkward dancing is, but the teacher rebukes his attitude. The instructor reminds them that, as superhumans, they will one day be expected to dance at formal events. While pairs begin to form, two students just stare at each other, unsure of what to do. But Green remains by herself, and the others wonder why nobody has asked her to dance. One remarks that she's hard to approach, giving off an untouchable aura. The teacher tries to comfort her, but the young woman jokes that she must not be very popular. With a smile, the green-haired girl interrupts the teacher, calling out with an idea. She then asks if she can partner with her guardian, a request that surprises the protagonist. The teacher agrees, and the girl rushes over to her guardian, thanking the instructor for the permission. The protagonist starts to rise, but before he can object, Green excitedly approaches him. He tries to decline, admitting he doesn't know how to dance, but the young woman puts on a cute, pouty face. Smiling, she extends her hand and urges him to come on before the class ends. With the pair set, the teacher instructs the students to hold hands and follow the steps. With a sigh, the man prepares to dance with the young woman, looking extremely uncomfortable. He stares at her in silence, seemingly unsure how to begin the social dance. Blushing slightly, the green-haired girl also seems a bit flustered by the situation. The regressor's hand trembles as he hesitates, appearing embarrassed to touch the girl. She teases him with a smile, asking if he's feeling shy about touching her. The young woman then gently takes his hand, telling him not to worry about a thing. She explains with a smile that emotions don't connect solely through the touch of one's hands. Green warns him not to dance poorly, as it could negatively affect his guardian evaluation. She asks if they can begin and then accidentally steps on his foot as they start to dance. With that, the two begin to waltz together, surrounded by imaginary flower petals and musical notes. Smiling, the young woman asks why his hands have suddenly become so sweaty. She teases him, further asking if he's so nervous that he's sweating in other places too. The green-haired girl briefly imagines the man shirtless, causing her face to flush. Flustered, she clumsily steps on his foot again and quickly apologizes for her mistake. In their close proximity, the two lock eyes in silence, a special connection seeming to form between them. The scene shifts to a cafe just outside the academy where the two are now seated. A bead of sweat on his face, the protagonist appears to be slightly flustered, but he quickly composes himself, his expression returning to its usual seriousness as he faces her. All of a sudden, the green-haired girl gets a nosebleed, looking very surprised. The official just stares at her with his typical indifferent expression, not understanding what's happening. Her face red and her eyes wide, the girl looks incredibly embarrassed. In a flashback, he's teaching a young woman to dance, telling her to go on too slowly. Back in the present, the young woman takes a sip of her drink, trying to hide her embarrassment. She wonders aloud why she's bleeding, and when he questions her, she yells back that she doesn't know. The young woman then compliments him, admitting she was surprised he could dance better than she expected. He asks if she needs to see a doctor, but she insists that dragons don't need such things. Dabbing her nose with a tissue, the girl seems to be lost in thought. In the vision, the woman praises him, saying he's not as rhythmically challenged as she had imagined. With an encouraging smile, she tells him he'll get the hang of it with a little more practice. The regressor replies that he's never been taught how to dance, which surprises the girl. She then gets up and asks if he has any plans after class, and the man says he doesn't. With a bright smile, the young woman invites him to do something fun with her, leaving him speechless. The scene transitions to a beautiful night sky dominated by a brilliant full moon. In Moscow, Russia, we see a research facility belonging to the demon organization Invisibility. Suddenly, a red alarm blares throughout the facility, signaling a major breach. As the alarm wails, a panicked researcher sprints down a dark corridor littered with bodies. She curses under her breath, wondering where such a powerful monster could have appeared from. Realizing they can't stop it alone, she hits a button in a desperate attempt to escape. The woman then makes a break for a heavy metal door, saying they must warn headquarters immediately. But just then, the protagonist's clone materializes behind her, blocking her escape. Startled by his sudden appearance, the demon researcher demands to know what he wants from her. His blue eyes glowing, he reveals that his sovereign is searching for the demon known as Type X. Defiantly, the woman declares she'd rather be taken out than betray her organization with that information. He lifts her with his shadows, remarking that their true nature always surfaces when facing their end. He continues, however, that when they experience extreme pain, their human side tends to emerge. With a smirk, he holds her chin and asks if she, too, would like a little dance under the moonlight. After extracting the necessary information, the demon researcher is finally eliminated by the copy. With his task done, the copy contacts the original through their link, respectfully addressing him as my lord. He reports the Type X has been transferred to the headquarters and is currently inhabiting a female host. Back at the dorm, the protagonist listens intently to his copy's report. The copy inquires about a researcher named Vera, and his master confirms that was indeed her. The regressor then orders him to assume her identity and uncover the true form of Type X. The copy accepts the mission and, with unwavering loyalty to his monarch, prepares to infiltrate. With a look of intense focus, he begins to alter his appearance to perfectly resemble the researcher. It is revealed that Prototype X has the ability to enslave minds and grows progressively stronger over time. Back in the dorm, the protagonist hears someone calling him Mr. in a cheerful voice. His grandfather clock authority activates, and he realizes the malice from the horizon has altered X. Green peeks out from behind a curtain, urgently beckoning him to see something, but he asks what it is. He thinks to himself that some things never change, and any obstacles to his daily life must be eliminated. This leaves the man with a confused expression, unable to comprehend the girl's behavior. The green-haired girl puts on a cute face and says she doesn't see the problem, as she finds it fun. He asked what she's up to now, and she explains she thought it would be a nice idea for the summer. With a smile, she invites him to step inside, and he questions her about this strange game. His authority reads the malice from the horizon, searching for beings who have strayed from the timeline. Bashfully, she asks if he's having strange thoughts, and the man tells her not to push her luck. The young woman then proudly shows off her new outfit and asks if it looks good on her. In his past regressions, he always made it a top priority to eliminate Proto-TX at all costs. In the store, she had asked if he wanted to see, and while the official said no, she didn't seem convinced. With a smile, she had wondered aloud if she should have bought it, and he had told her to just go home. But then Green revealed she was actually there to buy gifts for the children, which surprised him. She explained that Little Winter's teddy bear was falling apart and she wanted to get her a new doll. When he asked about the others, she said she was getting a wallet for Goldie. As for Summer, she mentioned the redhead wanted something she saw in a movie, but admitted it was a bit weird. The protagonist had then simply turned and started walking away without a word. The girl asked him to choose Winter's gift, and he had agreed to her request. Following that, the man entered a toy store to find the perfect present for Little Winter. At the counter, a bored-looking saleswoman watched him with little else to do. She explained that 4-year-olds prefer make-believe toys and demonstrated one on him. With a toy stethoscope in hand, the saleswoman showed him how the gift worked, but the protagonist just stared at her blankly, seemingly unimpressed with the idea. Outside, Green wondered if leaving him to choose the gift was a good idea. Suddenly, the employee's jaw dropped, completely shocked by what she was seeing in the toy store. She figured he didn't come with a woman and knew nothing about children's toys. With a smile, she asked if the child was his daughter, but the official flatly said no. The employee then asked if he would be paying by card, and the man nodded. She concluded he must be the uncle, and thought it was endearing for a man to choose a gift so carefully. The saleswoman sized him up, guessing from his physique that he was either a model or in the military. She smiled and asked for the child's age, and he replied she was about 4 years old. With a sly grin, the woman said she would take care of everything, and he accepted her help. She thought to herself that guys like him usually spend a lot sensing a big sale. At that moment, an adorable image of Little Winter dressed as a nurse flashed through her mind. The woman offered him a 10% discount on other sets if he bought the full kit. Ultimately, he walked out of the store laden with a massive pile of gifts she had convinced him to buy. She was stunned when she saw his black card issued only to ultra-rich VP families. Seeing that, the salesman found him even more attractive and considered trying to make a move. Just then, Green appeared, taking the man's arm and pulling him close. With a flirtatious smile, the salesman tried to chat up the official, asking if he had a girlfriend. The young woman shot the employee an irritated glare, and the woman assumed she must be his sister. Yubum complained that he bought all the wrong things, as she only wanted a single doll for the little one. She then held up a simple brown teddy bear, saying this one looked much better. The girl then gave the official a knowing look, as if she understood exactly what had happened in the store. The saleswoman tried to defend her sales pitch, insisting the child would have loved the toys, but the young woman cut her off. She explained that this bear was similar to her old one and that she had intended to buy it all along. With a chilling smile, the girl reiterated that the little one does not like other toys. The employee was left bewildered by the exchange, wondering if the young woman was actually his girlfriend. The scene then shifts to the beautiful facade of the dormant nighttime. Holding the new teddy bear, Green asks if the VIP discount can be applied to her other purchases. Back at the dorm, the other girls are ecstatic over the mountain of gifts. An excited Goldie asks if all these presents are really for them. With that, the blonde celebrates her brand new wallet, and little Winter joyfully hugs her new beer. The redhead then shows off her rather peculiar gift, the one Green had mentioned earlier. A mischievous grin spreads across her face as she approaches Goldie to test out her new toys. The blonde asks what Summer's gift was, and the redhead gives her a suspicious look. Little Winter thanks her guardian with an adorable hug, while another girl screams in terror in the background. With a smile, Green hands a gift to the man, tell him to accept one as well. Inside the box, he finds a blue necktie. The girl explains she bought it since he always wears the same one. She smiles and promises to buy him a full suit once she starts earning her own money, and the man thanks her. He tells her she should have bought something for herself, but she reveals that she did. The official asks what she bought, and the green-haired girl just smiles mysteriously. From a corner, the armored janitor watches the scene unfold in silence, a curious tilt to his head. The scene changes, showing that several weeks have passed in the bustling modern city where the academy is located. In his room, the protagonist gets dressed, appearing to be preparing to go somewhere. It's revealed that the young woman bought a special outfit she plans to show him later. He then calls for the janitor, who promptly appears in his room, still wearing the pink apron over his armor. The man informs him that he will be away for 3 days, entrusts the night with taking care of the little one. Elsewhere, a group of cadets prepares for an event, chattering that it's finally about to begin. The regressor reveals that Summer will be accompanying him, and we see the redhead in her room with her toys. Over a communicator, he tells her there's no time to relax, prompting the girl to ask why. In a vast hall, scores of cadets gather before a massive shimmering purple portal. He observes that the young cadets look tense, likely having never experienced real combat. It's explained that within monster subjugation units, there is a crucial role known as the operator. The cadets will move in 3-person teams, guided by a guardian who issues their commands. For this simulation, each team's guardian will assume the role of operator for the mission. The event is called the Great Mental Battle Simulation, a virtual survival combat exercise. With that, all the cadets begin to file toward the portal to start the simulation. The redhead scans the other cadets as they get ready for the battle simulation. A blonde boy nervously introduces himself to her as Hisaka Sujiro. Immediately after, a purple-haired girl named Kim Jean also introduces herself to the young woman. The redhead thinks that she needs to find someone she can tolerate, since the mission requires a team of 3. The two then invite her to join their team, seeing as she is still by herself. Angrily, the girl scoffs, calling them losers and asking where they suddenly popped up from. A bully tries to attack the boy but is stopped at the last second by an intervening hand. The protagonist agrees to let them join, and the redhead yells in shock at his decision. He tells her to just find another team, but she complains that would be too much of a hassle. Suddenly, the bully lands a hard punch in the boy's gut, making him grunt in pain. The boy bows and promises to work hard, but the redhead screams at them to get lost. The bully gets in the young man's face, threatening that he'll be taken out if he gets on his nerves again. Frightened, the boy apologizes profusely, while his partner watches the scene in silence. The aggressor then turns to the girl, stating that her boyfriend has already said he's sorry. With a malicious smirk, he grabs her and says that she also owes him an apology. Another bully tells him to cool it, but the man retorts that he doesn't care about the other guardians. He lifts the girl's bangs from her face, telling her to stop being so gloomy, but she tells him to back off. The man continues to taunt her, but the redhead suddenly appears, asking for the definition of a word he just used. The bully freezes, realizing the girl he was harassing is the infamous Yuyorim, known as the lunatic of the Blue Dragon Academy. She repeats her question with a dead, serious expression. He recalls being warned to stay away from the redhead, as she was considered extremely dangerous. The bully explains that the word refers to a cadet with no guardian and no influential connections. With a mocking smile, he gives a thumbs up, and the redhead seems to grasp the situation. Furious, the girl complains about being forced to team up with these powerless nobodies. The aggressor questions her, asking why someone with her strength would team up with them. He then invites her to join his team instead, a suggestion that shocks his friend. With a sly grin, the man thinks he can easily control the girl if he can just get close to her. He believes they're two of a kind and that he can manipulate her if he can match her tempo. But the redhead sends a powerful punch straight into the bully's face, launching him backward. His friends are stunned by the girl's raw power and the force her surprise attack. The other two cadets are equally astonished by the scene and the strength of their new teammate. Enraged, the man threatens the purple-haired girl, asking if she wants a beating too. The redhead glares at him with pure hatred, demanding to know who gave him permission to touch her shoulder. With his nose bleeding, the bully calls her a psycho for attacking him so viciously. Furious, the young woman threatens him, vowing to destroy him if she ever sees his face again. With a hateful glare, the girl grinds her teeth and stares down her new, weak-looking teammates. From a distance, the protagonist watches the scene unfold with his usual tired, indifferent expression. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the hall, calling all cadets' attention to the start of the simulation. Professor Kwan K-tae introduces himself and announces that he will explain the event's rules. He explains that the cadets have been divided into 50 teams and deployed to various starting points. He also warns that if a cadet is eliminated, they must wait 3 hours before they can rejoin. The protagonist then prepares to give his own team their final instructions. As they step through the portal, the team materializes in a dark cavern filled with a purple haze. With the explanation concluded, the professor wishes all the cadets the best of luck. It's revealed that the virtual dungeon for this simulation is called the Ent's Nest. The purple-haired girl points out that they lack both the speed and stamina of the redhead. The final rankings will be calculated based on activity points, eliminations, and total damage dealt. In another section of the cave, the bully is still complaining about his throbbing nose from the redhead's punch. The protagonist then asks the red-haired girl just how many teams she expects him to carry for her. The young woman compliments the design of the virtual dungeon as her team steps through the portal to begin. With a smirk, the redhead boasts about her weakness, but the other girl warns her about potential ambushes. The red-haired girl declares they should just charge out and defeat everyone, an idea the others strongly opposes. Annoyed, the young woman insists she doesn't need a plan and tells the other to just provide her with cover. The purple-haired girl argues that the other teams also have operators and won't be so reckless. Elsewhere, the bully is still nursing his headache, regretting that he ever provoked the redhead. The redhead asks the official if he has a target number of teams in mind, which confuses the man. The aggressor's friend questions his plan to kick one of them out to make room for the redhead. The bully clarifies it was just a ploy to gauge her reaction and swears he'll get revenge if he finds her. The purple-haired girl scolds her, and the boy attempts to mediate between the two. With a wicked smile, the redhead declares she will annihilate every single team they encounter. The bully suddenly appears before them, his nose still injured, and questions her bold threat. A malicious grin spreads across the red-haired girl's face as she challenges him to try something. In the blink of an eye, the young woman strikes him with a powerful blow, his health dropping to 17. The opposing team's operator is stunned, wondering how she managed to get behind him so quickly. The bully's teammates ready their weapons, preparing for combat. The red-haired girl lands gracefully with her sword drawn, and the operator screams for his team to prepare themselves. Wasting no time, the young woman lunges forward, her sword poised to strike the enemy with full force. With a terrifying smile, she informs them that this is not a battle. It's a one-sided hunt. And with that, the red-haired girl unleashes an attack on all 3 members of the enemy team simultaneously.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.